Bona, lobo, wabona kimi bayadlala, abakhohlwe, mina ngeke, ngiyeke, ngizokuthanda, njalo, nongathandi, yozathande, ngisho ubaba, nomama, angeke bangikhethela ukuthi ngithandane nobani inhliziyo ifuna lo, ifunayo, abangani, nabangeke, ngamane kuphela umngani inkosi impela inhliziyo ifuna lo, ifunayo, funa wena, 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 wedwa, inhliziyo ifuna lo, ifunayo, themba lami, ngiyacela, ungalinge.
Six o'clock Central African time. A very good morning to you. It's time to rise and shine. That's the name of the program right here on Channel Africa Radio, where we bring you the African perspective. Thanks so much indeed for waking up with us each weekday morning on the program. 6 to 9 every single day. We're bringing you the best in current affairs and news. So, I'm Peter Ndoro. Asanda Beda is away today. And we're broadcasting, as I said, from Johannesburg in South Africa. So, what do we have on the program today? Well, we have a lot that we're looking at. Amongst other issues, the former Minister of Police in South Africa was interviewed by a parliamentary committee, and he said quite a lot of interesting things, and we'll get to the bottom of that. And of course, elections in Ivory Coast are due on Saturday, and we'll be unpacking that. And so it's a lot to look forward to on the program. But first, let's catch you up with the day's news as we say good morning to Onele Nsinzi, and that'll be followed by some sports headlines with Musibudi Makura. Good morning.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Good morning, Peter, and a very good morning to our listeners. The former First Lady of Ghana, Nana Agyemang Rawlings, has died at the age of 76. She was the widow of Ghana's longest-serving leader, Jerry Rawlings, who led 2 coups before being twice elected as president. In 2016, Agyemang Rawlings became the first woman to run for presidency in Ghana but lost. She was known for founding a movement credited with assisting women across the country, especially in poor areas. Internet access in Cameroon was significantly disrupted yesterday as protests continued over alleged irregularities in this month's presidential election. Cameroon's Constitutional Council on Wednesday threw out all petitions contesting the October 12 presidential election, clearing the way for full results to be announced. The world's oldest ruler at 92, Paul Biya, is widely expected to maintain his 43-year grip on power. Protests have flared in several cities after partial election results reported by local media showed Biya was on the course to be declared the winner. The chairperson of the African Union Commission, Mohamed Ali Yusuf, has received copies of credentials from the ambassador of the League of Arab States to Ethiopia and the African Union, Mohamed Omar Ahmed Mahoun. He also welcomed the new ambassador of the Islamic Republic of Mauritania to Ethiopia and permanent representative of to the African Union, El Hussein Naji. Yusuf reaffirmed the long-standing bond of solidarity and cooperation between the AU and the LAS. He's also commended Mauritanian active participation in the work of the AU and its organ. South Africa's education lobby group, We Call Education, says the criminalization of learners is not the answer to bullying. This follows the suspension of 8 learners at Milnerton High School in Cape Town in the Western Cape province. The learners were allegedly involved in a violent bullying incident at the school last week. A video doing rounds on social media shows how a learner is being assaulted by other boys with objects such as hockey sticks. Equal Education Deputy Secretary General Nontsikelelo Dlulani has called for adequate psychosocial support for learners involved in bullying incidents in schools.
Beyond the adequate psychosocial support for learners in schools, they must also make sure that they train SGB members and the school safety committees to play their role so that situations and incidents like these do not happen. We do not support the criminalization of learners, but we are saying it must go according to policies, but at the same time make sure that the structures that are there, they must be active in responding to these and providing psychosocial support for the learners in schools and making sure that it does not happen again.
And lastly, the Pentagon has announced its new generation press corps who will be permitted to report from the U.S. Defense Headquarters. Over 60 journalists, largely from far-right platforms, have signed new restrictive media policy agreements. They've also received accreditation, the BBC's Abiona Bola.
Just a day after the new generation press corps was ushered in, another controversial alt-right journalist has joined the fray. Brianna Morello from Alex Jones's conspiracy theory program, InfoWars, an outlet which lost the civil case for falsely claiming that the Sandy Hook school shooting never happened. Joining her will be a plethora of right-wing influencers, including Turning Point USA's media venture Frontlines and MyPillow CEO Mike Lindell's Lindell TV. Earlier this month, all the major news outlets, including Fox News, walked out and handed in their Pentagon passes in defiance of the new policy, which prohibits the publishing of material not explicitly approved for release.
Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Ntsinzi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news, the Sawa marathon record holder Ruth Cheptegei given a 3-year ban while Yannick Sinner reaches the last 8 at the Vienna Open. Details coming up at 6:30.
Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Peta are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
Every day after the 6 o'clock news, we bring you something we call the Africa Roundup. And essentially what it is we take a look at the top stories that played out across the continent and beyond in the last 24 hours. And we do this to catch you up, to make sure you don't get left behind and you don't miss out on any important events and key issues on the continent. And it sets you up for the news day ahead. And we do this with our team of correspondents and journalists and other voices across the continent, putting all of those stories into context for us. And we begin the Africa Roundup with this story where Zambian President Hakainde Hichilema has urged citizens to renew their commitment to peace and unity as the nation marks its 61st independence anniversary today. In a televised address, President Hichilema said that independence should be seen as not as the end of the journey, but rather as the start of the ongoing fight against poverty, inequality, and underdevelopment.
Zambia is blessed with rich mineral wealth, fertile land, abundant water bodies, and above all, a resilient and peace-loving people. With these blessings, poverty must never be our destiny. This is why we focused on attracting investment that delivers value addition, provide jobs, business opportunities, and treasury income to better the lives of all our people. We should embrace a culture of integrity, innovation, unity, and hard work, most of all. With this, there is no limit to what we can achieve as a people.
The Kenyan government has defended President William Ruto's assent to 8 bills last week, saying that it followed a scheduled process in line with constitutional timelines. Among them is the Computer Misuse and Cybercrimes Amendment Act, which government spokesperson Dr. Isaac Mwaura said that will strengthen efforts against online threats such as child pornography, cyber harassment, as well as financial fraud. And it's not designed to curb free expression.
On the Computer Misuse and Cybercrimes Amendment Act, it is important to note that the new amendments do not curtail freedom of expression or give government agencies unchecked power to silence dissent, as alleged. Rather, they strengthen Kenya's capacity to combat real and growing threats such as child pornography, online extremism, terrorism, propaganda, cyber harassment, identity theft, and financial fraud. The power given to the National Computer Crimes Coordination Committee to render a website or application inaccessible is subject to proof that it promotes unlawful activities, and any such directives is subject to judicial review in accordance with Article 47 and 50 of the Constitution on fair administrative action.
Namibian President Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah has urged stronger collaboration between the public and the private sectors to overcome obstacles to the country's economic growth. Speaking at the opening of the first Namibia Public-Private Forum in Windhoek, she said that the platform is designed to promote dialogue between government and business on strategies to drive national development.
We are ushering into a new era of decisive, efficient, and result-driven governance, an era that honors the sacrifice of those who fought for Namibia we are enjoying today. This calls for all of us, public and the private sector, to embrace collaboration and act with agency. I underline the word agency. We cannot be a beggar in the international community when we have resources. We must have leverage and even bring them to the point they can beg us.
The South African Reserve Bank has wrapped up a two-day conference focused on improving cross-border payments across sub-Saharan Africa, exploring both the opportunities and persistent challenges. Despite rapid digitalization elsewhere, much of the region still depends on cash transactions, which remain costly and risky. Business-to-business payments also continue to face major hurdles, as Nosipo Khadebe now reports.
Now, cross-border payments is the flagship initiative of the SARB under the G20 presidency. And this two-day meeting essentially comes after the finance track meeting of the G20 finance ministers and central bank governors in Washington last week, discussing developments in the global economy as well as overall progress of the G20 finance track. Now, they will make recommendations that they want presented or discussed during the November summit of heads of state, that meeting taking place in Johannesburg, also essentially a month away from now.
And that's how we come to the end of today's Africa Roundup, and there'll be more for you on Monday morning after the 6 o'clock news. Stay with us, we've got so much more still to come on the programme, including a look at US-Russia issues.
Você é fluente em português? É apaixonado por rádio e quer trabalhar na África do Sul? Você tem documentos que o qualificam para trabalhar na África do Sul? Nesse caso, podemos ter uma oportunidade para você trabalhar no Canal África. Envie seu currículo e demonstração para Canal África at newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Lembre-se, se você não receber alguma resposta nossa em 14 dias, isso significa que você não foi selecionado. Canal África, a perspectiva africana.
Wake up to the essence of the continent. Rise and shine on Channel Africa.
The United States has imposed sweeping new sanctions on Russia's two largest oil companies, Rosneft and Lukoil, accusing Moscow of showing no commitment to ending the war in Ukraine. The move came just a day after plans for a high-level summit between Presidents Trump and Vladimir Putin collapsed. Now, the sanctions sparked a wave of responses across Europe, with the EU leaders welcoming the US decision and unveiling their own 19th package of restrictions against Moscow. Butlale Pele reports.
In Washington, President Donald Trump announced a major escalation in sanctions against Russia on Wednesday, October 22nd, with the U.S. Treasury saying the measures target Russia's biggest oil producers, Rosneft and Lukoil, in a bid to cripple Moscow's war funding.
We canceled the meeting with President Putin. It didn't feel right to me. It didn't feel like we were going to get to the place we have to get, so I canceled it, but we'll do it in the future.
The move marks a significant shift in Trump's approach towards the Kremlin. After months of resisting pressure to target Russia's energy exports, the U.S. says the time for restraint is over. Senior fellow at the Center of Strategic and International Studies, Maria Snegovaya, had this to say.
The Trump administration finally sends a very important signal to other, purchasers, like customers and all sorts of agents who continue to engage with Russia, that there might be serious consequences coming.
But while Trump moved to squeeze Moscow financially, he stopped short of providing Ukraine with long-range Tomahawk missiles, saying Kyiv would need at least 6 months to train for their use. But former U.S. Ambassador to Ukraine, John Herbst, dismissed that argument.
So I don't have any doubt that if we gave them Tomahawks tomorrow, without any American instructions, they'd figure out within 2 or 3 months how to use them very effectively. So President Trump, took some arguments made by experts who don't really understand Ukraine to justify something he didn't want to do. But having said that, if he really wants Putin to make peace along the lines of his own proposal, he's going to have to put much more pressure on Russia than just what he did today. And Tomahawk should be part of that.
As Washington tightened the screws, Moscow flexed its military muscle, conducting a major nuclear training exercise involving intercontinental ballistic missiles capable of reaching the United States. At the same time, NATO has been carrying out its own nuclear deterrence drills, underscoring the growing tension between the world's major powers. Meanwhile, in Brussels, at a Renew Europe pre-summit meeting, European leaders, including President of Renew Europe, Valerie Heyer, and European Commissioner for Enlargement, Martha Koss, welcomed the American sanctions. President of the European Council, Antonio Costa, announced its 19th package of EU sanctions, including a ban on Russian liquefied natural gas imports.
This goes in the right direction. It's the first true decision for sanctions by the United States since the return of Donald Trump. And yes, it is a strong symbol.
I'm very pleased that we have been able to come to the 19th package of the sanction, because we have to put pressure on Russia to come to the peace. At the same time, we have to help Ukraine, and I hope that the leaders will be able soon to come to the decision about the recovery, reconstruction loan.
Today in the morning we approved already the 19th package of sanctions, targeting shadow fleet, banking and energy sector of Russia. And today in this European Council we will take the political decision to ensure the financial needs of Ukraine for 2026 and 2027, including for acquisition of military equipment.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky arrived in Brussels on Thursday, October 23rd, welcoming both US and EU sanctions, but saying more must still be done to force Moscow into a ceasefire.
Of course, it's more tough sanctions on Russia. 19th package is very important, and of European leaders, of EU, but American sanctions are also very important. This is a good signal to other countries in the world to join the sanctions. You know that not only energy, we need shadow fleet, etc., and continue until Putin will stop this war. So these are decisions very important.
While Western powers move in lockstep to isolate Moscow economically, Russia's nuclear exercises are a reminder that peace remains fragile and that the path to ending the war in Ukraine is still fraught with global risk. I'm Butlale Pele, SABC News.
90% of organizations find insider attacks difficult to detect than external ones. And this was one of the key findings contained in a newly released report that looks into the growing cybersecurity risks facing financial services firms across South Africa and the broader African continent. The report was released by global management consulting firm Kearney. Tutong Gobeni compiled this report.
In recognition of Cybersecurity Awareness Month, Kearney's latest report, Securing the Insider Threat Prevention in Financial Services, explores the rising impact of insider threats and outlines a strategic framework for prevention and resilience. As digital transformation accelerates, so too does the complexity and frequency of cyber threats, particularly those originating from within organizations. Joanne Paul, Associate Director at Kearney, says this report paints a clear picture on the breaches emanating internally.
Kearney report, Securing the Inside, reveals a growing cybersecurity risk in financial services, insider threats. While most firms focus on external attacks, this report highlights how internal actors, whether malicious or accidental, are increasingly responsible for breaches. Nearly 1/3 of breaches come from within, driven by privilege misuse, outdated systems, and human error. Financial services firms are prime targets due to the sensitive data they hold, with insider threats becoming more frequent, harder to detect, and more costly.
Some of the key findings contained in the report include insider threats account for nearly 1/3 of cybersecurity breaches in financial services, and 90% of organizations find insider attacks as difficult or more difficult to detect than external ones, among others, which Paul says the cost of the breach is millions of dollars.
Motivations ranging from financial gain to ideological reasons. Plus, legacy systems increase insider threat by 40%, and the average breach cost in financial services is just over $6 million, significantly higher than other industries. Insider risk isn't just an IT issue, it's a strategic business concern that demands board-level attention and cross-functional action.
The recommendations in the study suggest that the implanting of insider threat prevention into business strategy and governance organizations can not only protect sensitive data and maintain regulatory compliance, but also build the trust necessary to thrive in an increasingly digital economy. Paul says there are 4 strategies that could ensure a strong defense system.
Kearney recommends 4 strategic actions to help move from reactive defense to proactive resilience, ensuring insider threats are anticipated, detected, and contained. First, use proactive threat modeling to identify risks early. Second, build a cyber-aware culture where every employee is part of the defense. Third, deploy advanced tech like AI and behavior analytics to detect anomalies. And fourth, create a cyber data vault, a central hub for threat intelligence and response. The message is clear. Insider threats are systemic, and resilience demands both intelligent tools and even more intelligent, vigilant people.
For Channel Africa News, I am Tutong Gobeni in Johannesburg.
And we stay in South Africa, where the country's Minister of Science, Technology and Innovation, Dr. Blade Nzimande, has warned that poverty is being passed down from one generation to the next across much of Africa. A cycle that he says is being reinforced by global economic and technological systems that favor the wealthy. Speaking at the Human Sciences Research Council and National Research Foundation's Engaged Research Conference in Johannesburg, Nzimande highlighted how inequality continues to deepen worldwide, even amid major advances in science and technology. Channel Africa reporter Michael Mbeo filed this report.
Generational poverty remains one of the most pressing challenges facing Africa today, a cycle where deprivation, inequality and limited opportunity are passed from parents to children after trapping families for decades. Despite notable progress in expanding access to education, healthy care and infrastructure, many African households still find themselves unable to escape the grip of poverty. South Africa's Minister of Science, Technology and Innovation, Dr. Blade Nzimande, has identified generational poverty in Africa as a major hurdle.
In fact, one of the biggest challenges we have in the African continent is that our families are handing over poverty to the next generation of poverty. Now, this, of course, can be attributed to a number of factors, not least regarding the powerful intersection of the neoliberal global political economy and dominant science and technology systems prevalent in significant parts of the international system today.
He quoted the UN's report reflecting how global economic and technological systems continue to deepen inequality, leaving millions vulnerable despite progress in development and innovation.
The United Nations 2025 World Social Report observes that, I quote, despite significant gains in poverty reduction, many people teeter on the brink of poverty, even as they move up the income ladder. Over 2.8 billion people, more than a third of the global population, live on between $2.15 to $6.85 a day, unquote. The report further observes that around 60% of people globally are concerned about losing their jobs and being unable to find new ones. It's one thing to face the prospect of losing a job, but it's worse when also there are no possibilities of finding a new one.
Nzimande says this is taking precedence where 65% of global population is living in countries with increased income inequality.
At the same time, 65% of the world's population is living in countries where income inequality is growing. This is occurring at a time of major advances in the frontiers of scientific knowledge and new technological changes, promising rises in economic productivity, rising prosperity, and a world filled with abundance.
He said these challenges, coupled with health, education, economic, conflict, and environmental crises, underscore the urgent need for more inclusive and socially responsive research and innovation.
The effect of these systems, together with their ideological traditions, can also be discerned across many parts of science and technology systems in the global south itself. Humanity is also grappling with a complex set of other challenges, such as poor access to quality healthcare and education, armed conflicts, economic risks such as supply chain disruptions, and high debt levels and ecological crises like climate change and biodiversity loss.
HSRC CEO Professor Sarah Musweta said the role of HSRC is to ensure that it produces inclusive research that promotes equality and justice.
As I joined HSRC in 2023, it was very clear that the role of the HSRC should be that of promoting justice at the center of it. Justice at the center of it. For transformation, there is a value in having research that at its core seeks to look at marginalized communities, at its core wants to promote equity and inclusion in its approach, in its findings, even in its being.
Michael Mbewe, Channel Africa News, Johannesburg.
Darubini ya Afrika na I am Henry Shakif.
Katika kutazama mwili wa aliyekuwa waziri mkuu wa Kenya Raila Odinga baada ya kuwasili kutoka nchini India. Kwa nini tukio hili limetokea?
Tokea mwendo wa asubuhi kulikuwa na mipango ambayo ilikuwa imeweza kuwekwa kabambe kwamba mwenda zake Mheshimiwa Raila Odinga mwili wake utapofika katika uwanja wa ndege ungeweza kupokelewa na rais, lakini kule kukakuwa na wananchi ambao walikuwa wengi zaidi ambao walivunja kingo na kuingia katika uwanja wa ndege.
Umati mkubwa wa watu umekuwa kimlilia toka taarifa zake za kufariki hayati Raila Odinga. Pengine Raila Odinga atakumbukwa na nini katika taifa la Kenya?
Watu wengi watamkumbuka Raila Odinga kwa kupigania katiba ambayo nchi ya Kenya iko kwa sasa. Alijaribu kupigania pia demokrasia.
Darubini ya Afrika kila Jumatatu hadi Ijumaa kuanzia saa 11 kamili hadi saa 12 kamili jioni majira ya Afrika ya Kati.
New day, new stories. Start your morning right with Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
It's 6:28 Central African Time. If you are in Zambia this morning, Muribwanji, a very good morning and happy Independence Day. Yes, on this day in 1964, Northern Rhodesia gained its full independence from the United Kingdom to become the Republic of Zambia. And Dr. Kenneth Kaunda, affectionately known as KK, became the country's first president, a position that he held for a number of decades. And today is celebrated annually as Independence Day in Zambia. So happy Independence Day to everybody in Zambia. We hope that you have a wonderful day ahead today. Also on this day, 1935, Italy invaded Ethiopia. Though the main invasion began earlier, a significant historical note for this date refers to the widespread American and African American protests and fundraising efforts for the Ethiopian defenders against the invading Italian forces. That's 1935, Italy invading Ethiopia. And a lot of influences from foreign countries remain to this day. And also in 2005, she's an African American, so we've got to count her in. Civil rights activist Rosa Parks died at the age of 92, and her refusal to give up her seat to a white man on a public bus in Montgomery in the south of America in 1955 helped spark the American Civil Rights Movement, which went on to be led by people like Dr. Martin Luther King. So significant happenings on this day in history, October the 24th. Significant happenings happening currently in the world, and to take us through those headlines, so we say good morning to Onelen Sinsi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. The former First Lady of Ghana, Nana Agyeman Rawlings, has died at the age of 76. Some members of the South African Parliament's ad hoc committee, who are investigating allegations of corruption and infiltration of criminal syndicates in the justice system, say they want the KwaZulu-Natal Provincial Police Commissioner Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi to appear before the committee again to explain himself. And US President Donald Trump says his government will just kill people as he continues his policy to target alleged drug cartels. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Nzinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
And it's time now for a first look at what's happening in the world of sport as we look forward to, I'm sure, a busy weekend ahead. Good morning to you, Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you so much, Peter. Very good morning from the sports desk. We'll start with a story that broke overnight. So, women's marathon world record holder Ruth Cheptegei has been banned for about 3 years after the Kenyan admitted to anti-doping rule violations. Now, the Kenyan was provisionally suspended in July following a positive test of hydrochloroside, which is a banned substance used commonly as a masking agent, on the 14th of March of this year. So the Kenyan achievements were predate that sample, including her world record time of 2 hours, 9 minutes and 56 seconds in Chicago in October of 2024, and that will still stand. The Athletics Integrity Unit had sought a 4-year ban, but the 31-year-old's punishment was then reduced to about 3 years because she admitted to the violations. However, the AIU will continue to investigate evidence from Cheptegei's phone, which is found to indicate a reasonable suspicion that her positive test may be intentional, including messages dating back as far as 2022. On to football news now. Bafana head coach Hugo Broos says his assistant Helmut Mkelele could be the ideal candidate to succeed him when his time with the national team does come to an end, though he does admit that the final decision will rest with the South African Football Association. Now, speaking during a media roundtable with sports editors as well as senior journalists at Safa House, Broos said appointing Mkelele would then ensure continuity given the solid working relationship they've built over the 4 years.
Becomes the coach after me, because then you have a follow-up, same thing. When Helman would take the team, the way of work and the philosophy, and it will stay the same, with a little bit more African thing, because I'm a European. But Helman, he thinks in a lot of things. In 95% of the things, he thinks the same thing as me. And that's why I'm so happy with him. I'm so happy with him. He thinks that 95% of the things is exactly the same. So it should be very good.
However, Bruce also pointed out that Mkelele's lack of a required coaching license to lead the senior team could present a major obstacle to his potential.
The only problem with Helman is that he don't have the qualification. Can avoid that when Helman can follow the courses of for UEFA Pro license. I stopped after the World Cup because of my age, not because I don't like to be anymore. If I should 10 years younger, you can be sure that I wanted to stay here.
On to some cricket news now. The South African cricket team that beat Pakistan by 8 wickets in Rawalpindi to square the series on Thursday has received some bad news ahead of the white ball series. So standing T20 international captain David Miller as well as fast bowler Harold Coetzee have been ruled out of the upcoming series in Pakistan. Miller picked up a hamstring strain in the build-up to the T20 series in Rawalpindi on Tuesday, while Coetzee has suffered pectoral muscle strain in recent match against Namibia and has been ruled out of both the T20 International as well as the 3-match one-day international series. The selectors added batters Matthew Britsky as well as the uncapped Tony Dozozi to the T20 International squad, which will now be captained by Donovan Ferreira. The Dolphins fast bowler Othniel Botman will replace Coetzee in the ODI squad. And finally, ATP chairman Andre Gaudzeni has defended men's tennis crowded schedule and did so on Thursday, saying scheduling remains the player's choice and that the tour is working to set clear incentives so that the right number of matches are played across the season. Now, speaking at the ATP, or rather after the ATP had announced a new Masters 1000 event in Saudi Arabia from 2028, Andre pushed back on criticism from leading players over a year-round grind. Now, he said the ATP's ongoing Vision 2028 revamp aims to optimize the calendar as well as strengthen the tournament's premium product. The Grand Slam, the Masters 1000 events as well as the season-ending finals, while also improving rules as well as incentives so that players build schedules in a waterfall system starting with the biggest events. He also said the ATP could help create better rules and that the off-season should be longer for the players and the fans. And that's a wrap from the Sports Desk at this hour. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, our email address is newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or give us a call on +27 11714 4459. I'm back with more sports news in the next hour. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Africa in Business on Channel Africa.
The United States was very vocal at the beginning of South Africa's G20 presidency, and this is largely due to strained relations with South Africa at the time that they were not really keen on participating. Where do they stand right now?
The US is planning to take over the presidency of the G20 next year, and our understanding from them is that they intend to continue to do so, and therefore it is quite difficult then to be in a situation where you are not attending deputies' meetings or discussions during our presidency and then to take over the presidency next year. From a finance track perspective, there has been engagement. We've been working on a communique last week and this week here in Zimbabwe. What's important about that is that it's a consensus document. And so all the members in the room have to agree to the language that is used there. And our US colleagues have been part of those discussions and negotiations.
Bringing the African markets into your home. Channel Africa, the African perspective.
6:38 Central Africa time. Let's catch you up with what's been happening in the world of business, economics and commerce. And as usual, at the business desk, we say good morning to Buntle Headbush.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thanks, Peter. Good morning, and a very good morning to our listeners. And our top business story this hour, Senegal has sharply increased its projected debt service bill by around $5.8 billion over the next 3 years. The revised budget follows newly acknowledged billions of dollars in liabilities that were hidden by the previous government. The revised figures were released during the International Monetary Fund and World Bank annual meetings in Washington. A postdoctoral researcher in international affairs at the University of the Free States International Office, Dr. Tafadzwa Ruzive.
The IMF is satisfied with the reconciliation that has happened. So taking our cue from the IMF, we could say that it does reconcile. But knowing the nature of debt issuance and financial emissions that happen, maybe there are still some debts that are hidden. But currently, so far as things go, the IMF is looking satisfied with the disclosures that have happened.
Nigeria's construction sector is on an upward trajectory, fueled by urban expansion and a growing demand for sustainable infrastructure. This is according to DMG Events. This momentum was on full display at the 5th edition of Big Five Construct Nigeria, which recently concluded at the Landmark Center in Lagos. The event brought together over 9,800 professionals and industry leaders for 3 days of innovation, collaboration, and knowledge exchange. Senior Vice President at DMG Events, Josine Heymans.
We saw a fantastic turnout of 145 exhibitors joining us, both local and international. Over 9,800 professionals joining us this year, really joining us for conversations on construction and also like latest product displays.
Over $5.73 billion of investment in South Africa's KwaZulu-Natal province over the next 5 years have been pledged at this year's Provincial Trade and Investment Conference in Durban. The Premier of the province, Tammy Ndulu, has announced. This is up from last year's $4.87 billion, of which 60% of developments are already underway. Ndulu says the planned developments are spread across all the districts in the province and will create 60,000 direct job opportunities and 240,000 indirect jobs. He says it's encouraging that most of these projects are brand new and not expansion on existing projects. South Africa's Transport Minister, Barbara Creecy, says an underperforming freight logistics system is a constraint on the country's economy and a direct obstacle to job creation. Creecy was addressing Transnet officials during the unveiling of $55.4 million new ship-to-shore cranes at one of the Durban port's container terminals. The equipment is expected to enhance the terminal's operational efficiency, cargo handling capacity, and competitiveness. The new cranes will replace an old fleet which has reached its end-of-life cycle. According to the World Bank's latest Container Port Index, the Durban port had the longest turnaround times for container terminals worldwide. Fresh sanctions imposed by the United States on Russian oil companies are contributing to the higher Brent crude oil price. The price of Brent crude oil jumped by more than 5% to $61 yesterday afternoon and has continued the upward trend this morning to $65.66 a barrel, signaling the biggest surge since mid-June. The U.S. has imposed sanctions on two major Russian oil companies, namely Rosneft and Lukoil, in retaliation to the ongoing war in Ukraine. It's noted that the two companies account for nearly half of Russia's oil exports. Visiting professor at Wits Business School, Professor Yanni Rousseau elaborates.
The oil price is very sensitive to international political uncertainty. And if the oil price is on an upward trajectory, in my mind, that would be an indication of increased political uncertainty. For instance, we have a number of wars going on. We still have, as we've had for a long time, this war between Russia and the Ukraine. So I would look for political uncertainty as the reasons for the oil price to go up. At the same time, we have to remember that the Northern Hemisphere is about to go into their winter season. And normally in their winter season, the demand for oil increases.
And now on our first look at the indicators this morning, $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,461 naira. In Botswana, it's 13 pula 28. Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shilling 24. And in Zambia, it's at 22 kwacha 26. Moving to the BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil is trading at 5 real 39. Russia, 81 rubles 36. In India, it's 87 rupees 82. China, 7 yuan 12, and South Africa, $1 is trading at 17 rand 35 cents this morning, much stronger than yesterday morning. $1 is trading at 74 pence to the British pound and 86 to the euro. Looking at commodities, gold is trading at $4,117 per ounce, platinum at $1,580 per ounce, while the price of Brent crude oil, as mentioned earlier, is at $65.66 a barrel. Those are your business news. I'll be back with another update in the next hour. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or give us a call on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I'm Buntle Headbush.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa.
It's time now for our G20 fact of the morning. Did you know that at the 2010 G20 summit in Toronto, Canada, the host city actually issued a fake hotel booking website to confuse protesters and pranksters who were trying to flood real hotels with bogus reservations? Well, the ruse worked. Security teams traced hundreds of fake bookings to the decoy site, whilst genuine delegations booked through a private system known only to summit organisers. And that's our G20 fact for today.
G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa, championing Africa through solidarity, equality, and sustainability. Wake up to the essence of the continent. Rise and shine on Channel Africa.
Something that's been sharply in focus recently is cyber security, and businesses in South Africa are facing growing security challenges, from theft to property damage, increasing companies, and are turning to artificial intelligence to improve detection and response, whilst keeping human oversight central. Our reporter Lebohang Mabange looks at how it's being applied in practice.
Traditional security measures often struggle to keep up with fast-moving threats. Now, artificial intelligence and connected devices are being used to detect unusual activity, reduce false alarms, and give security teams more time to respond. Stallion Integrated, a security company operating across South Africa, is using artificial intelligence and IoT technologies alongside human guards to detect unusual activity and reduce false alarms. Rian Willemse is the General Manager for Operations and IT.
AI gives us a level of insight and response speed that traditional methods just can't match. It allows us to detect patterns and predict behavior before a crime happens, rather than just reacting afterwards. For example, AI analytics can pick up suspicious activity or abnormal movement across multiple cameras simultaneously, something a person simply can't do as fast or as accurately. In short, it adds a layer of intelligence that strengthens how we prevent, verify, and respond to incidents. At Stallion Technology, we've taken this capability and built it into our own remote monitoring platforms.
Willemse says AI allows security teams to act on real threats more efficiently while reducing time spent on false alarms.
We've seen a major shift in both efficiency and results. The combination of AI and IoT means our control room receives real-time alerts that are far more accurate, which reduces false alarms and speeds up reaction times. We've had multiple cases where early detection through AI directly led to arrests and prevented losses for clients. It's not just about the technology, It's how it's being used in our local context that makes a real difference.
While AI plays a central role, human decision-making remains essential in managing security operations.
It's all about balance. Technology enhances people, it doesn't replace them. The human element is still crucial for decision-making, judgment, and the ability to manage complex or emotional situations. But technology gives those people better tools. AI provides intelligence, automation handles routine tasks, and humans make the critical calls.
According to Willemse, AI has already helped prevent crimes in real time.
Recently, our AI detected suspicious movement at a client site after hours. Our control room verified the threat, dispatched response teams immediately, and 2 suspects were arrested before they could gain access. In another incident, an alarm triggered a rapid response, and another suspect was caught. These cases show that when data and AI-driven tools are applied correctly, they produce immediate, tangible results.
Security analysts say AI-assisted systems are becoming an increasingly important tool for detecting threats and improving response times, while human judgment continues to guide critical decisions. Reporting for Channel Africa, I am Lebogang Mabange in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Well, from Johannesburg, we go to Cape Town, where a disturbing incident at a local school, Milnerton High School, where a video surfaced showing a grade 10 pupil being violently assaulted by older learners wielding hockey sticks, belts and hose pipes. And this has ignited national outrage. 8 older boys have been suspended and faced disciplinary hearings. But this case has also raised urgent questions for the rest of the continent, where learners older than 18 are involved in school violence. Does this criminal justice system step in too quickly or too little? And what happens to younger children if bullying cultures are not truly checked? Well, joining us to explore the deeper issues of justice, school safety and alternatives to criminalization is equal education researcher Yolisa Piliso, and her organization campaigns for quality, equality and safety in South Africa's school. Yolisa, thank you very much indeed for joining us. I said she, but he. Good morning to you.
Good morning, and good morning to your viewers as well.
Yeah, so let's start with this. I mean, you are, as an organization, your main concern is that criminal charges against these learners may not be the right response to what's happened. Can you explain why you think that?
Yeah. So the first thing in our call, because we've been working on the safety of learners, and particularly in the Western Cape, and we've engaged DBE, Western Cape Education Department's policies then as far as it deal with disciplining and with safety of learners in schools. So I think the main call for us has always been, how do we ensure that we make use of the existing policies that the DBE and the WCT has in relation to deal with learners that are maybe facing some transgressions into the schools. But what we know for sure is that policies in schools are, and even in line with the South African Schools Act, they promote positive discipline and ensuring that these learners are retained in school, ensure that their right to basic education is not infringed as a result of their own conduct. Because essentially here we're dealing with a systemic challenge, which is bullying and violence by children. But importantly, we must not view children as perpetrators only, but children as victims of society and the places that they come from, even their homes and the schools that they're schooling in. So it's not necessarily a very good decision to just chastise learners and immediately criminalize them, whereas you're able to use school policies that will ensure that those learners are rehabilitated inside schools and ensure their right to basic education continues, and ensure that they are also protected as well in light of their conduct.
You've used some really nice words, and some people might even accuse you of sanitizing what actually happened. The reality is, you keep calling them children, but 6 of those 8 are not children. They're adults. They're 18 plus, and the criminal justice system sees them as adults because they've got the capacity to think for themselves and make proper decisions, criminal liability, right? So now you've got adults beating up children in schools. And what you're saying is we should treat them like children just because they're in school uniform.
So firstly, I think let's pause with the criminal justice use in the system and in the legal system as it is. Yeah, I understand they are not minors. There may be majors in terms of the law and the criminality that follows them and everything that comes with that. But I think that the first point is let's look at it as we're dealing with learners here. Whether now you are categorizing learners as adults or because they are 18, but essentially you are dealing with learners that are in school uniform, learners that are in school, and there's many reasons that result to learners even being in school in the ages of 18. That can be drawn from many systemic reasons, which would see learners continue to be retained for indefinitely in some grades and schools not utilizing the promotion and progression policy to ensure that learners are progressing with their cohorts. So it's important that we view this in a lens of some of those intricacies in terms of why learners of the age of 18 and even older are still in school. It's because of the use of, or maybe the failure to use the promotion and progression policy to ensure that these learners are progressing. So importantly now, we know that we're dealing with learners, whether you are calling them as adults or you're calling them as people that should be criminalized and be followed by the criminal sanctions. But essentially, you're dealing with learners that are in schools, learners that are bound by the school policies and the school laws that regulate the conduct of learners in schools. So the criminal justice system follows after you haven't even used the school policies. So when the conduct of this nature happens within a school premise, it is not a good or it's not even the attempt to use criminal justice system for a conduct that is happening in a school or by learners. The first use of laws and the first trigger of laws that applies in the conduct of these learners is that of South African Schools Act and many other policies that deal with learner discipline. But we see the sensationalization of this issue and the criminalization of the children that are involved. But not to get us wrong, equal education does not condone violence. Equal education has been condemning violence against learners, learner to learner, teacher to learners. We've been working on this to ensure that all of the children that are within the schooling system, their rights are staying, ensuring that they are protected and ensuring that they're able to learn and until they're adults. But that is not to say that the criminal justice system cannot follow these children. But we must be careful as a society what we are doing in terms of the systems that we're using in as far as it relates to these matters. Because there's nothing that precludes the department to act with it or within its own policies outside the criminal justice system. But doesn't also the people that have been affected, they are within their own rights to institute criminal charges against
Okay.
those that have perpetrated the violence.
Let me give you another scenario. What if the same boys, the 18-year-olds, it's away from the school premises, they're not in school uniform, and they beat up a child on the street? Do we still call them children and still not call them to account as adults?
I think the scenario is different and the context is also different because you're saying now that you're dealing with an adult that is not in school uniform and adults that is not in school.
Yes, but they're the same kids, they're just not at school. They're the same children who are learners, but they're not at school. And they're in the street, in their neighborhood, and they beat up someone who's 2 years younger than them.
Yes, the laws that relate to the conduct of that because now you're also accepting that they're children.
I'm not actually, to be honest with you. I mean, if my child,
I'm listening to the point that you're making.
Yes, but I'm saying is
that
those 18-year-olds are men,
mm-hmm.
and men cannot be beating up children. We can't be
Yes.
hiding behind school uniforms, Yolisa, surely.
No, definitely, we accept that. And I think it's not a correct connotation to say that 18-year-olds are hiding behind a school uniform. You can look around in the schools that we have in South Africa. You have many 18-year-olds. So how do we get to regulate those 18-year-olds within the schooling system? And as far as it relates to the protection of their rights to basic education and ensuring that their learning continues and to be protected and enjoying the same rights as those of learners in schools. So in your example, and accepting that the position that you're proposing and you've put it to me that now that they are not in school uniform and they are committing a crime outside school, then the criminal justice system follows. Because it's not a matter that relates to schooling, it's not a matter that relates to the school premises. Their
Okay.
conduct is then not regulated
All
by
right.
the South African Schools Act.
So they get away with it because they're at school.
It's not getting away from it because they are in school. They are protected and having the same rights as those of learners because they are inside classrooms and they are same as other learners that are in school, and therefore they should be enjoying the same protections of law in as far as it relates to their right to basic education.
You're right.
And that is to ensure that all of these learners, by the way, are
Yeah.
rehabilitated and protected as well.
All right, we've run out of time, but very briefly, what about the child that got beaten up? Surely he can't be expected to face the same children in school the next day because they've not been taken away. They're not safe.
Definitely, accepting that. So the most important thing that we've been calling for all learners, whether even you are facing violence directly or indirectly, is how do we ensure that learners are getting psychosocial support services, and not for psychosocial support services to be a privilege for learners, by the way, to ensure that psychosocial support is part of their right to education, and they are also getting support to ensure that they get to learn within an environment and within the violence that they've faced
Right.
and get professional help. But in terms of in ensuring that there's a
Lisa,
long-term solution.
unfortunately, we've run out of time. And I wish we could have talked about this a lot longer, but I get your point. And I think as a parent, most of us defer to protection, but we understand that those kids are also victims in some way. Thank you so much indeed for joining us on the program.
Thank you so much for having me. I wish we had more time.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll revisit this for sure, I promise. Okay,
right.
It's 7 o'clock Central African time, which means it's time for your news with Onel Nsinsi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Looking at your top stories, the former First Lady of Ghana, Nana Aguiaman Rawlings, has died at the age of 76. She was the widow of Ghana's longest-serving leader, Jerry Rawlings, who led 2 coups before being twice elected as president. In 2016, Aguiaman Rawlings became the first woman to run for president of Ghana, but lost. She was known for founding a movement credited with assisting women across the country, especially in poor areas. Some members of the South African Parliament's ad hoc committee investigating allegations of corruption and infiltration of criminal syndicates in the justice system say they want the KwaZulu-Natal Provincial Police Commissioner Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi to appear before the committee to explain himself. The Provincial Police Commissioner apologized for falsely accusing the former Police Minister Bheki Cele of taking money from a criminal suspect, Vusimuzi Ket Matlala.
This last part of the SC is not necessarily something that must be directed to the minister. He said that to us about the minister. So he's got anything to say, he has to write down to us and say, it looks like I got my facts wrong. And therefore I apologize to the minister and to the committee and to the people of South Africa. So I don't think it's for minister to even say anything. If there is such a development, we're being taken for we're also being surprised. We can't be members of this committee. People come say things here, and then when they retract them, we hear them like any other person. It must come to us.
This was Economic Freedom Fighter Party leader Julius Malema. Meanwhile, the African National Congress Party Chief Whip Ndumiseni Ntuli said Mkhwanazi should put his retraction and apology in writing.
Withdrawn is very important.
because we were told in this hearing or this committee that there are people who have a capacity to design and send messages on behalf of your number without you getting involved in that. Now, a matter serious as the one that we're dealing with now, I am of the view that it should not just be withdrawn, as other colleagues have said, by merely sending an SMS. I think we need something officially, properly written, that must be publicly communicated, not in a way that it has been made available.
Internet access in Cameroon was significantly disrupted yesterday as protests continued over alleged irregularities in this month's presidential election. Cameroon's Constitutional Council on Wednesday threw out all petitions contesting the October 12 presidential election, clearing the way for full results to be announced. The world's oldest ruler at the age of 92, Paul Biya, is widely expected to maintain his 43-year grip on power. Protests have flared in several cities after partial election results reported by local media showed that Biya was on course to be declared the winner. And lastly, U.S. President Donald Trump says his government will just kill people as he continues his policy to target alleged drug cartels. He has again referred to his operation as a war. However, Congress has to pass any such declaration. Trump has taken aim at Colombia and Mexico, alleging that cartels are running both countries.
You got a lot of bad people in the cartels, and you could look at a country like Mexico, and I really respect the president. I really respect a lot of the people over there, but a lot of the leadership, but they are in fear in their own country because those cartels are running those countries, okay? And that includes Colombia.
For any news stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us at +27 11 714 4459. Channel Africa News, I'm Oneli Nzinzi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, marathon record holder Ruth Cheptegei given a 3-year ban, while Yannick Sinner moves into the last 8 at the Vienna Open. Details coming up at the...
New day, new stories. Start your morning right with Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Now, Ivory Coast heads to the polls this Saturday in what many are calling a defining moment for the country's democracy. President Alassane Ouattara, now 83, is seeking a 4th term after nearly 15 years in power, citing economic stability, infrastructure growth, and private sector investment as his legacy. However, the campaign has been marked by controversy. Key opposition figures, President Laurent Gbagbo and ex-Credit Suisse CEO Tidjane Thiam have been barred from running, and security forces have restricted protests and detained activists. With Ouattara's ruling RHDP party firmly behind him, he faces 3 challenges but remains the clear frontrunner. Well, joining us now to unpack what's at stake for Côte d'Ivoire and the wider West Africa region is Paul Melly, who's a consulting fellow with the Africa programme at Chatham House in London. Thanks very much indeed for joining us, Paul. Welcome to the programme.
Good morning. A pleasure to be with you.
So, we're starting to see a common theme with incumbent presidents. Take out the opposition and sort of clear the path for your re-election. Is this what we're seeing in Ivory Coast? And if so, given its history, what are the risks?
Well, I think there are really 2 risks. And it's really important, I think, here to stress that Ivory Coast, Côte d'Ivoire, as it's known, is one of the most important countries in the whole of West and tropical Africa. It's the 2nd largest economy in the region after Nigeria, a very, very dynamic economy. It's the world's biggest cocoa producer. It's one of the most influential countries in the whole Western African region. And it's been a key partner for the international community, a strong ally on issues such as climate change, stability in the Sahel, global issues. And Alassane Ouattara has been one of the most influential and respected statesmen in the region over the past 14 years or so. But that is all those things explain why the loss of faith, if you like, the questions about this election are so important. The country has had a very difficult past. From 2000 through to 2011, there was a series of political crises. There was partition. There were at least 2 bouts of civil conflict, partly motivated by really difficult, painful identity politics. And all that has been, not completely, but largely healed in the years from 2011 onwards, the past 14 years. But after Ouattara had done his second term, so that ran out in 2020, he ran for a third term under a new constitution which had been drawn up a few years earlier. And that was a bit contentious, but many people understood because he'd been planning to retire and his chosen successor had stood down. His chosen successor had had a heart attack, and and so Ouattara, if you like, stepped into the breach at the last minute, and many people understood. But this time around, it's quite different. Ouattara himself had said at the beginning of this year that there were plenty of potential successors on the government side in his own camp. He's spoken in the past of the need to hand over to a new generation. And on the opposition side, you didn't just have what you might call old school political leaders of his own generation with a past involvement in those crises from before, like former President Gbagbo, but you also had Tidjane Thiam, a one-time minister, but who's in his 60s, who's younger, and who, as you mentioned, he'd been chief executive of Credit Suisse, and before that, chief executive of the financial giant Prudential in Europe. So somebody who'd had another career and represented, if you like, a moment of change. So the fact that both of these two figures are shut out means that many Ivorians feel they're being denied a meaningful choice. And that's really dangerous at a point when popular faith in democracy in West Africa is anyway badly shaken.
Might we see the outrage that we saw on the streets of Madagascar, the streets of Mozambique, and other parts of the continent over elections?
It's possible. And I think Madagascar, although in the case of Madagascar, obviously, because of its traditional links with Asia, the influence, if you like, is coming from elsewhere. But there is this same phenomenon. There's been a lot of urbanization. And in the case of Côte d'Ivoire, Ivory Coast, Abidjan, the main city, the population now is somewhere between 6 and 8 million out of a national population around 30 million. So you've got a huge number of young people in urban areas, much more informed, of course, than before with social media and all the exchange of ideas and information that goes on these days. And there's a deep disillusion, particularly in West Africa, with the political class, because there's a sense that with these changes in constitution, people running for third or even fourth terms, a sense that the political class who came in with the advent of democracy decades ago, they are now getting complacent. They've been in power a long time. And this is a region, of course, where, you look at the demography, the figures for population growth and the way that population's broken down. These are overwhelmingly youthful countries. In a typical West African country, probably half of the electorate, not just half the population, half of the electorate, half of all the voters are under the age of 30. And so there's a deep disillusion with the feeling that these older generation politicians are not allowing proper, effective democracy to function properly and allow a new generation to come in. And it's almost more in the most developed economies like Cote d'Ivoire that feeling is particularly strong and could be dangerous. Don't forget that in the countries just north of Cote d'Ivoire, you've got military regimes that have taken over.
All right, we're running out of time, but my experience is that when leaders start to notice their popularity waning, that's when they start to do things and enforce their stay in a sense. If there's a free and fair election and people show up in their numbers, would the game be up for Ouattara?
Well, there's just a tiny chance. It's only a tiny chance, but there's a tiny chance that he could lose, because last time around, turnout was just over 50%. It seems likely to be lower this time because Cham and Gbagbo are excluded for bureaucratic reasons that some Ivorians agree with, some disagree with, but which many people know the government could have changed. You know, it could have tweaked the rules or granted a pardon to Mr. Gbagbo to allow them both to run. But because Cote d'Ivoire has a two-round election system, the election system used in many French-speaking countries, there are one or two candidates, particularly one. There's a former commerce minister, Jean-Louis Billon, who is himself quite well known and who's running and plugs into one of the main opposition traditions. And if Ouattara falls below 50% on the first ballot, then it will go to a runoff. And it might just be that if Billon, it's hardly imaginable that Billon could win on the first ballot. But if Ouattara doesn't clinch outright victory on the first ballot, it might be that opposition votes will coalesce behind Billon in the runoff. And there is a 1 month gap between the two rounds. So if Ouattara falls slightly short this weekend, there is the opposition would then have a month, so plenty of time to get really organised and mobilise voters to turn out in the second ballot.
Paul, we're going to have to leave it there. Many thanks for your insights on this coming election.
You're welcome.
That's
good to be with us.
Thank you. That's Paul Melly, Consulting Fellow at the African Programme at the Africa Programme at Chatham House, sharing his insights on the upcoming elections in Côte d'Ivoire, actually tomorrow.
Você é fluente em português? É apaixonado por rádio e quer trabalhar na África do Sul? Você tem documentos que o qualificam para trabalhar na África do Sul? Nesse caso, podemos ter uma oportunidade para você trabalhar no Canal África. Envie seu currículo e demonstração para Canal África at newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Lembre-se, se você não receber alguma resposta nossa em 14 dias, isso significa que você não foi selecionado. Canal África, a perspectiva africana.
Es-tu préoccupé par quelque chose? Es-tu passionné par les questions qui comptent? As-tu une voix qui mérite d'être entendue? Eh bien, nous avons la plateforme parfaite pour toi. Téléphone-nous ou fais-nous un WhatsApp au +27 66 408 87 42 et nous te rappellerons. Sois dans la conversation.
Salut Channel Africa, ici Beno le diamant rouge et Bina l'Export depuis le Cameroun, le pays des lions. Voilà.
Sois dans la conversation. Il ne s'agit pas seulement de parler, mais c'est ta chance d'exprimer ton point de vue, de partager tes opinions et de t'engager avec une communauté qui valorise ton avis. Suivez-nous sur les réseaux sociaux, visitez notre site www.channelafrica.co.za et préparez-vous à partager vos points de vue sur Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
New day, new stories. Start your morning right with Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Right, now, today marks a pivotal moment in Southern African diplomacy as Daniel Francisco Chapo, President of Mozambique, concludes a 3-day working visit to Zambia at the invitation of his counterpart, Hakainde Hichilema. The visit has included high-level government talks, a business roundtable, and also an audience with the Mozambican community in Zambia. It coincides with Zambia celebrating its 61st Independence Day, a milestone in the nation's own journey since 1964. Now, with us from Lusaka is our Channel Africa correspondent Arthur Davis Scorpo to reflect on the significance of both of this, the visit and the national celebrations. So Arthur, happy Independence Day.
Thank you so much, Peter, and we really appreciate Ziko, Peter.
So, how are people feeling about Independence Day? Often, the longer certain parties or certain politics persist, people don't celebrate as much as they used to. What's the feeling in Zambia at this time?
Well, people are feeling good that Zambia has turned 61. Of course, there are those moments when people obviously would like not really be so happy and jovial and all that. But I think that the mood in Zambia right now is that I think it's just quite calm, and people, of course, others, of course, are going ahead with their daily duties and all that. But there is that joy from among those that really appreciate what independence means to them. So when you move around, you would see area places where the like the Zambian flag and all that has been sort of like is sort of like dawning around there. Maybe through painted walls, or maybe through maybe just placards that have been put there, like of Zambian flags and all that. Yeah. So then also, so people also like getting like like wearing t-shirts and clothes that resemble or that speak to our national identity as Zambia, that is red, green, black, and orange, just to speak to our national flag mostly. So people are just so others are going. Others are going about with their daily, duties and all that, but others obviously are in that happy mood and happy, mood. Yes.
Okay, so a joyous time in Zambia celebrating 61 years of independence. Let's talk about the visit by President Daniel Chapo of Mozambique. How was he received and how has the trip been? Hello, Arthur, you there? It looks like we may have lost the line there with our Channel Africa correspondent in Lusaka, Arthur Davis. Arthur, thanks very much indeed. We had lost you for a few moments. Take us through President Chapo's visit, how he's been received, and what's happened so far in his visit.
Well, President Francisco Chapo has been received well in the country, and when he came in, obviously he had to get straight to his counterpart and just get to be welcomed. So they have been meeting with President Hakainde Hichilema, his Zambian counterpart, and they've held closed. They've held open door meetings and of course closed door meetings together. And mostly the issues that have come out from this have been mostly about the two countries and what they really share, and mostly are going to diplomacy issues and diplomatic issues, economic issues, and of course trade and investment that these two countries share. And Zambia's president, in fact, in the first meeting, emphasized that um, Zambia at some point, even now, of course, we have been struggling. We are still struggling with electricity in terms of power. But at some point, Mozambique came in and had supported us. So the Zambian president, thanked his counterpart, President Francisco Chapo, for having helped Zambia in terms of giving us power and all that, and also the other relations such as around trade and
Right.
investment. Yes, and Zambia and Mozambique, come a long way. So we have had people coming from Mozambique coming to to seek refuge in Zambia when
Hello,
their
Arthur.
country has been pushing
Hello,
for
Arthur.
certain agendas.
Okay, it looks like we've lost him again. But I think he's given us the main thrust of those big issues, Independence Day today, and also the visit by President Chapo, and talking about the community between the two countries, Zambia and Mozambique. And so that visit looks like it's been a good one as well.
Wake up to the essence of the continent. Rise and shine on Channel Africa.
Let's go back to Côte d'Ivoire now, as the presidential election looms in Côte d'Ivoire. Concerns are mounting over transparency, access to information, and media freedom. Incumbent Alassane Ouattara is seeking a controversial fourth term amid the disqualification of key figures and heightened security around the campaign. Well, joining us now to shed a little bit of light on the state of transparency and media rights in this important electoral moment is Alfred Boulakali, who's the Regional Director of Article 19, Senegal and West Africa. And that's a global non-profit organization that defends freedom of expression and access to information. Thank you very much indeed for joining us, and welcome to the program. Hello, Alfred, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
I can hear you now. Yes, I can hear you now. Tell us what you see in terms of freedom of expression, access to information ahead of a critical election.
Sir, you need to start. I lost you for a while. Sorry.
I was just saying, if you could just give us your sense of, ahead of these elections, what transparency has been like and freedom of expression has been like in Côte d'Ivoire.
Thank you very much. As you know, election is a very important momentum for the citizens to express their voices and their opinions, to go to the ballot and exercise the right to political participation by electing the representatives. And Côte d'Ivoire will be having the presidential election let's say in just one day now, on 2025. What we've been seeing is very concerning in regard to freedom of expression and information integrity. Some months hit the election in June, for instance. We saw some online campaign, smear campaign targeting a journalist of France 24 simply because Marc Amara, a reporter of France 24, like I said, was subjected to an online smear campaign simply for having covering an opposition political party events. That harassment, we think, was orchestrated by political actors and Makamara was forced to cancel her identity during subsequent field reporters. We've been also seeing, unfortunately, repression of protests since the month of August till I will say the political election campaign. Not less than few days ago, there was a ban on protests by decree of the Minister of Home Affairs, justifying that to safeguard public order, and all political parties and political events in public spaces was banned, except those relating to political campaign. We see this as a politically motivated decree to prevent any form of decent voices to express themselves in the public. We also know that hundreds of people were arrested simply for having tried to express a decent voice in public spaces, and dozens of them were unfortunately sentenced. We think that repression of protests and criminalization of political engagement and citizen voices is really have a detrimental impact on freedom of expression and restrict the diversity of opinion within an electoral process. What is unfortunately to affect the trust of the process by citizens to be inclusive, fair, and transparent. We think that during an election process, it's very important to create conditions where all citizens can express themselves, can express different opinions. Political actors can move in the political space, in the civic space, to express different views, those participating to election and those not participating. So as electors can have different information, different opinions, and make informed decision when it comes to go to the ballots. Unfortunately, that has not been the case in Ivory Coast for this specific election.
All right, and unfortunately we're going to have to leave it there, but thank you very, very much indeed for giving us those important observations, and let's see how the elections are affected as a result. Thanks so much for your time, Alfred.
I thank you very much.
Thank you. That's Alfred Boulakali, who's a regional director for Article 19 Senegal and West Africa. It's 7:30. It's time for your news headlines. Good morning, Onele Nsinsi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. The Nigerian army says it has killed more than 50 Boko Haram and Sunni Islamic extremist group ISWAP militants after fierce battles in the country's northeast. Some members of the South African Parliament's ad hoc committee investigating allegations of corruption and infiltration of criminal syndicates in the justice system say they want the KwaZulu-Natal Provincial Police Commissioner Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi to appear before the committee to explain himself. And the United States is considering a proposal for humanitarian aid delivery in Gaza that would replace the controversial US-backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. Channel Africa News, I am Onele Nsinsi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
And it's time now to find out what is happening in the world of sport. Good morning to you, Rachel Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you so much, Peter. Very good morning from the Sports Desk. We'll start with this story. So Orlando Pirates will have to do something no other South African football club has previously done if they are to avoid an embarrassingly early exit from the Africa Champions League at the weekend. So Pirates must fight back from a 0-3 deficit in Soweto on Saturday after losing the first leg of their second round tie to the unfancied Saint Elo Lupopo from the Democratic Republic of Congo in Lubumbashi last Sunday. So no South African side has ever come back from a deficit of 3 or more goals suffered in the first leg of an African club competition knockout round tie, leaving the odds stacked against the Buccaneers, who had lofty ambitions of continental success this season. So tomorrow's second leg is at Orlando Stadium and kicks off at 3 p.m. Central African time, and with the aggregate winner advancing to the group phase of this season's competition. Well, Bafana head coach Hugo Bruce says his assistant Helman Mkalele could be the ideal candidate to succeed him when his time with the national team comes to an end, though he does admit the final decision rests with the South African Football Association. Now, speaking during a media roundtable with sports editors as well as senior journalists at Safa House, Bruce said his appointing of Mkalele would ensure continuity, given that there's a solid working relationship they have built over the past 4 years.
Becomes the coach after me, because then you have a follow-up, same thing. When Helman would take the team, the way of work and the philosophy, and it will stay the same, with a little bit more African thing, because I'm a European. But Helman, he thinks in a lot of things, in 95% of the things, he thinks the same thing as me. And that's why I'm so happy with him. I'm so happy with him. He thinks that 95% of the things is exactly the same. So it should be very good.
Onto this now, women's marathon world record holder Ruth Kiptich has been banned for 3 years after the Kenyan admitted to anti-doping rule violations. Now, Ruth was provisionally suspended in July of this year following a positive test of hydrochlorothiazide, which is a banned substance used commonly as a masking agent, on the 14th of March. Now, her achievements which predate that sample, including her world time of 2 hours, 9 minutes and 56 seconds in Chicago in October of 2024, will still stand. Now, the Athletics Integrity Unit had also sought a 4-year ban, but the 31-year-old's punishment was reduced to 3 years because she admitted to the violations. However, the AIU will continue to investigate evidence from Ruth's phone, which it found indicate a reasonable suspicion that her positive test may have been intentional, including messages dating back as far as 2022. On to some tennis news now. Yannick Sinner was made to work by Flavio Cobolli before the top seed Masters his fellowed Italian to reach the quarterfinals at the Vienna Open on Thursday. Now, Sinner dominated the first set 6-2 in the last 16 tie, but had to remain patient as Cobolli dug deep to clinch the second set 7-6. Now, 4-time Grand Slam champion Sinner is playing in Austria after retiring with cramps earlier this month in the third round match against Talun Griekspoor in the Shanghai Masters. Now, Sinner did not face a break point in the first set against Cobolli, but was unable to convert any of the 4 break opportunities to secure in the second set. Sinner will now face 8th seed Alexander Bublik in the quarterfinals after he downed Francesco Cerundolo 6-4, 6-2 in the last round of 16. Well, still with tennis news, the ATP chairman Andre Gazzuni has defended men's tennis crowded calendar and did so on Thursday, saying scheduling remains the player's choice and that the tour is working to set clearer incentives so that the right number of matches are played across the season. Now, speaking after the ATP announced a new Masters 1000 event in Saudi Arabia from 2028, he also pushed back on criticism from leading players over the year-round grind. Now, Andre said the ATP's ongoing Vision 2028 revamp aims to optimize the calendar as well as strengthen the tour's premium product, the Grand Slams, the Masters 1000, as well as the season-ending finals, while also improving rules and incentives so players build schedules in a waterfall system, starting with the biggest events. He said the ATP could help create better rules and that the off-season should be longer for players as well as the fans. And that's a wrap from the sports desk at the Sawa. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, our email address is newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or give us a call on +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Gender-based violence is destroying lives and tearing communities apart. It happens in homes, in schools, at workplaces, and too often in silence. But it doesn't have to continue. If you see it, speak out. If you are hurting, reach out. Because doing nothing is not an option. Listen to all 19 SABC radio stations from Wednesday, 23rd of July for Hard Talk, discussions, advice, dramas, educational shows, and interviews around GBV with experts, survivors, lawmakers, and the whole country affected by gender-based violence. For all your favorite SABC radio stations, call 0800 428 428 to report abuse or get help. GBV, it ends with you. This message is brought to you by the SABC.
Right, it's time to find out what's happening in the world of business as we say good morning once again to Bontle Headbush.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thanks, Peter. Good morning. And our top story at this hour, Coca-Cola says it expects to take an impairment charge of about $1 billion during the fourth quarter of 2025 related to the sale of a part of its interest in bottling operations in Africa. Shares of Coca-Cola dipped about 1% in the late afternoon session yesterday following news of the impairment charge. This after the Swiss-based bottler Coca-Cola HBC announced on Tuesday that it had agreed to buy a 75% stake in its African counterpart for $2.6 billion. Coca-Cola HBC would be acquiring US-based Coca-Cola's nearly 42% stake in Coca-Cola Beverages Africa, and the Gutsche family investment's entire stake, valuing the African bottler at $3.4 billion. The South African Reserve Bank chief economist Chris Loewald says a weakening US dollar is now proving to be a key driver in the global fight against rising prices. This came out during the central bank's monetary policy review for October. Loewald says while global growth remains resilient, inflation worldwide continues to moderate. He says this improvement has created room for countries to ease interest rates further.
The dollar rand this is the return on the rand, has increased quite a lot against the dollar. So the dollar's depreciation over the past year has helped that disinflation process in emerging markets. And we ask whether or not tariffs are starting to feed through into inflation numbers. I think the tentative answer is yes.
Meanwhile, Central Bank Governor Lesitsha Kganyago has issued a warning saying that despite generally better near-term economic results, the country continues to face deep structural challenges. Kganyago says the current global volatility could erode some of the recent gains.
It is a very volatile environment that we are in. And all of these tensions, trade and geopolitical, are likely to slow down global growth and keep inflation in focus. Here at home, growth has exceeded expectations in the second quarter, lifting the projected annual growth rate slightly. Continued reforms remain crucial to unlocking South Africa's growth potential. Inflation has stayed low and stable, closer to 3%.
South Africans who wish to voice their views at the National Energy Regulator of South Africa's public hearing regarding Eskom's application to amend the losses charge calculation methodology for embedded generators may submit their requests by the 17th of November. NERSA has announced that it's published a consultation paper following Eskom's application. According to NERSA spokesperson Charles Hlebela, Eskom intends to implement the amended methodology in the 2026-27 financial year's schedule of standard tariffs. Hlebela says that a virtual public hearing for oral representations on Eskom's application will be held on the 24th of November.
The proposed change aims to modify the existing formula for calculating technical losses incurred by embedded generators connected to the Eskom distribution network, ensuring that it better reflects the actual costs based on Eskom's recent technical studies. The generator losses charge is the cost that electricity generators pay to account for power lost when transporting electricity through the grid.
Fresh sanctions imposed by the United States on Russian oil companies are contributing to the higher Brent crude oil price. The price of Brent crude oil jumped by more than 5% to $61 yesterday afternoon and has continued the upward trend this morning to $65.60 a barrel, signaling the biggest surge since mid-June. The U.S. has imposed sanctions on two major Russian oil companies, namely Rosneft and Lukoil, in retaliation to the ongoing war in Ukraine. It's noted that the two companies account for nearly half of Russia's oil exports. Visiting professor at Wits Business School, Professor Yanni Rousseau elaborates.
Now, the oil price is very sensitive to international political uncertainty, and if the oil price is on an upward trajectory, in my mind, that would be an indication of increased political uncertainty. For instance, we have a number of wars going on. We still have, as we've had for a long time, this war between Russia and the Ukraine. So I would look for political uncertainty as the reasons for the oil price to go up. At the same time, we have to remember that the Northern Hemisphere is about to go into their winter season. And normally in their winter season, the demand for oil increases.
Now for a look at the indicators, one US dollar in Nigeria is trading at 1,461 naira this morning. In Botswana, it's 13 pula 28. Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shilling 24. And in Zambia, it's 22 kwacha 26. Moving to the BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil is trading at 5 real 39. Russia, 81 rubles 36. In India, it's 87 rupees 82. China, 7 yuan 12, and South Africa, $1 is trading at 17 rand 35 cents this morning. $1 is trading at 74 pence to the British pound and 86 to the euro. Looking at commodities, gold is trading at $4,117 per ounce this morning. Platinum, $1,580 per ounce, while the price of Brent crude oil, as mentioned earlier, is now at $65.66 a barrel. And those are your business news. I'll be back with another update in the next hour. For any business news stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Give us a call on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Buntle Headbush.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. Wake up to the essence of the continent. Rise and shine on Channel Africa.
Now, amid rising global uncertainty, the growth and scale of pension fund assets are increasingly prompting governments to look for ways to channel some of its capital into national priorities. This is contained in a recently released 17th annual Mercer CFA Institute Global Pension Index, and the index benchmarks 52 retirement income systems worldwide. Tutongomedi has more.
The 17th Annual Mercer CFA Institute Global Pension Index MCGPI benchmarks 52 retirement income systems worldwide. The index is a collaborative effort between Mercer, the CFA Institute, and the Monash Center for Financial Studies, with Alex Forbes providing critical input for the Southern African region. The MCGPI is the world's leading independent comparison of pension systems, evaluating each country across three core dimensions, highlighting strengths and areas for reform to improve retirement outcomes. Belinda Sullivan, head of corporate consulting at Alex Forbes, says the index covers three dimensions, with the Netherlands receiving A grade while South Africa scored C grade.
The Mercer CFA Global Pension Index is the world's leading independent benchmark for comparing different retirement income systems. So there are over 52 countries which participated in the 2025 review, representing around 65% of the world's population. The index really looks at the retirement system across three key dimensions. So we look at adequacy, so that has a 40% weighting in respect of are retirees receiving enough income for a dignified retirement. Sustainability, where they look at 35% of the index. Can the system deliver benefits over the long term? And then integrity, which is the balancing 25%. Is the system well governed, transparent, and trusted? Then across each of these, they give an overall grading to each country that participates, and that's based on a score out of 100. So for example, the Netherlands, Iceland, Denmark, Singapore, and Israel each received an A grade in 2025, while the South African system received a C grade.
The United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, and Malaysia recently encouraged pension funds to invest in domestic infrastructure and innovation. Meanwhile, in other markets, debates continue over whether pension funds should be compelled to consider environmental, social, and governance factors rather than focusing solely on financial performance. Sullivan says although South Africa received a C grade, it's an improvement from last year's D grade due to the introduction of the two-pot retirement system.
The results for South Africa in 2025 have been pleasing in that we see an overall increase in our grading from D up to a C grade, while our sustainability and integrity levels remained relatively stable. We had a vast improvement in the adequacy scoring. Now, the improvement in adequacy is primarily due to the introduction of the two-pot retirement system in September 2024. This resulted in the split of contributions going 1/3 to a savings component, which is accessible by members for short-term needs.
Furthermore, Sullivan says the report emphasizes the significance of collaboration between government and the key players and encouragement of the older workforce participation in order to boost sustainability.
The report highlights the need for continued reform and collaboration among government, industry, and stakeholders. And there are key trends and recommendations which include expanding the coverage of occupational pension schemes to include more workers. So looking at further increasing the support for the poorest elderly in order to improve adequacy. And then encouraging older workforce participation to boost sustainability, and then strengthening governance and communication to build trust in the system.
For Channel Africa News, I am Tuto Ngobeni in Johannesburg.
New day, new stories. Start your morning right with Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
In a major crackdown in Accra in Ghana, authorities have rescued 57 Nigerian nationals aged between 18 and 26 from a suspected human trafficking and cyber crime ring. The victims were reportedly lured under the promise of legitimate work, then forced to engage in online romance and extortion scams. 5 suspects have been arrested and a significant haul of laptops, mobile phones and internet-enabled devices have been seized. Our correspondent in Accra is Eric Mawena Egbeta, and he joins us now for a little bit more on the raid, the traffickers' methods and the wider cybercrime landscape in the country. A very good morning to you, Eric.
Good morning, Peter.
So, it's hard to imagine this kind of thing is happening in Ghana, of all places. Tell us a little bit about the scene where the police carried out this raid in Accra. What did they find when they arrived there, and how were suspicions raised, actually?
Well, when it comes to matters of cybercrime and this kind of raid which was undertaken by the Ghana Police Service, it's actually not the first time, even in this year. Off the top of my head, this is the third major raid which has been undertaken by either the Ghana Police Service or the Economic and Organized Crime Office, also a security agency here in Ghana, where they have been on the trail of a number of these human traffickers and cybercrime rings seeking to put a stop to their activities. In fact, when you get into the news or when the conversations come up, as far back as March somewhere, a major ring which was engaged in cybercrime related activities to the tune of in excess of $4 million and the likes, Ghanaians were actually extradited to the United States after investigations and collaborations between the FBI and Ghanaian authorities. And so it's an emerging trend which the authorities here in Ghana have been seeking to crack down on quite heavily. And this was just another of such incidents where they actually have been tailing these individuals for quite a while and made it to their locations and picked them up. And like you rightly stated, a number of these gadgets is what they picked up. Because of the challenges with finding jobs and the likes, they lure individuals with the promise that, look, there's a lucrative job here in Ghana, particularly from Nigeria and the likes. And if for somebody who's here, who's monitored the trend, you find Nigerians almost everywhere in Ghana, from the Volta region, the northern part of the country, in mining towns, you call it what, because they are in search of better opportunities. Ghanaians actually as well have been fallen for such scams as well, where a little earlier in this year, some Ghanaians were actually rescued from Ivory Coast as well because they were promised lucrative jobs in Ivory Coast, and it was later found out that it was a scam, and they as well had been housed and were being forced into cybercrime related activities. And so it's something that has come up in this year, and like I mentioned, this is the third major bust of such a nature. And the police, in their press release and commentary, have said just one thing, that they will continue to monitor these sorts of activities and continue to clamp down on them with a heavy hand, because it has potentials for blacklisting the country in terms of visa travels and other related matters. And that's why perhaps we're seeing a lot more in terms of these crackdowns over the last year, or in this year, if I can put it right.
How much do we know about the victims? Men, women, who are they?
Well, Nigerians mostly, because they were promised the opportunities of better jobs, which we understand. And there wasn't a mention of other West African nationals. It was mostly Nigerians who've been picked up in that release, which the police has been providing a bit more details of. There are some Ghanaians as well who are a part of this, and like I mentioned, it is a simple promise. You're promised that there's a better job awaiting you here in Ghana, and when you come, you are then housed and confined in some of the instances, or in this particular instance, and like all other instances, they are housed, unable to leave, they aren't fed properly. And so it is as and when you can work and achieve targets in terms of being able to swindle as many people as possible and bring in money, that's when you're given food. In some instances, actually, they are denied the opportunity to even take their bath, amongst many other things. And so the police upon the bus says that psychologists and others are having to have a look at these individuals where they are beginning to recuperate before processes will begin. They'll contact the Nigerian High Commission, and then they can begin the processes of returning them to Nigeria so they can make their way home as well. And so that's the nature of the individuals, mostly Nigerians, some Ghanaians as well involved. And for the Nigerians, they will be taken back after a while, because we understand that they are receiving some support and they are recuperating.
Is it both men and women?
As at the last time of check, it was mostly men. As at the last time of check, it was mostly men. There hasn't been a specific mention of the women and in their numbers. We're told it's um, mostly men, but in previous of such instances, I think at the last time I was at the headquarters of the Economic and Organized Crime Office, in excess of 400, it had women being a part of it. But in this instance, it's just been men.
And perhaps finally, does this look like something that's on the increase? And are people just not getting wiser? I guess with these high-profile arrests and rescues, perhaps the public might start to be a little bit more cautious.
Well, it's a challenging one, particularly when the issue or the subject of job provision is at the heart of it. That thousands of young people in Nigeria, thousands of young people in Ghana as well, because Ghanaians actually are also getting tricked and being taken to other West African countries. This year alone, like I mentioned, in Ivory Coast, we had to rescue some Ghanaians. In Ghana as well, we had to rescue some Nigerians as well. And the challenge continues to be that there aren't jobs available. The migration between Ghana and Nigeria is one that happens very frequently because, in terms of the currency valuation as well, the Ghanaian currency happens to hold a lot more value. And so when the promise comes in that there's a job here in Ghana for you, it's easy
They
to
jump to
convince
it
them.
straight away. Eric, we're going to have to leave it there. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. But thanks so much indeed, as always, for your reporting from Ghana.
As always, Peter.
That's Eric Mawena Egbeta, our correspondent in Accra. It's 8 o'clock Central African time. You are listening to Rise and Shine right here on Channel Africa, where we bring you the African perspective. This is the third and final hour of the program today. And in this half hour, we'll be taking a look at an ad hoc committee of Parliament in South Africa. And they're interviewing the former police minister, and some significant revelations have come out of his testimony yesterday, including contradicting the current police minister, suspended, albeit. So it's going to be quite an interesting day ahead, one's sure, to be sure, but we'll be unpacking what was said yesterday and what those might mean. That's all coming up after the news and sports headlines as we say good morning to Onelen Sinsi and Musibudi Makura.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. The Nigerian army says it has killed more than 50 Boko Haram and Sunni Islamic extremist group ISWAP militants after fierce battles in the country's northeast. The clashes came as insurgents launched coordinated drone and rocket-propelled grenade attacks on several military bases in Borno and Yobe State. The army reports that the militants used drones to drop explosives, a growing tactic in the region's insurgency. Researcher at the Institute for Security Studies, Malik Samuel, explains.
I think it's a really big victory and morale booster for the troops, especially if you look at how successful the group over the past months have been against the military. So this particular success, which came immediately after twin attack on the military bases, shows that the military has the capacity, to take on this group. Now, what it needs to do is to build on this success so that it doesn't become a one-off.
Some members of the South African Parliament's ad hoc committee who are investigating allegations of corruption and infiltration of criminal syndicates in the justice system say they want the KwaZulu-Natal Provincial Police Commissioner Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi to appear before the committee to explain himself. The Provincial Police Commissioner apologized for falsely accusing the former Police Minister Bheki Cele for taking money from criminal suspect Vusimuzi Cat Matlala.
This last part of the SC is not necessarily something that must be directed to the minister. He said that to us about the minister. So he's got anything to say, he has to write down to us and say, it looks like I got my facts wrong. And therefore I apologize to the minister and to the committee and to the people of South Africa. So I don't think it's for minister to even say anything. If there is such a development, we're being taken for we're also being surprised. We can't be members of this committee. People come say things here, and then when they retract them, we hear them like any other person. It must come to us.
That is the Economic Freedom Fighters Party leader, Julius Malema. Meanwhile, the African National Congress Party Chief Whip Mdumiseni Ntuli said Mkhwanazi should put his retraction and apology in writing.
Withdrawal is very important because we were told in this hearing or this committee that there are people who have a capacity to design and send messages on behalf of your number without you getting involved in that. Now, a matter serious as the one that we're dealing with now, I am of the view that it should not just be withdrawn, as other colleagues have said, by merely sending an SMS. I think we need something officially, properly written, that must be publicly communicated, not in a way that it has been made available.
South Africa's former president Jacob Zuma says he will meet with his legal team after the High Court in Pretoria slapped him with an order to pay back the $1.6 million spent on his legal fees. Zuma's legal fees linked to his arms deal corruption case were initially paid by the state. The Supreme Court of Appeal ruled in 2021 that Zuma was not entitled to state funding for his criminal case. Following an application by the state attorney for a repayment order, the court ruled that Zuma must repay the money within 60 days or the state may attach his pension and assets. Zuma was speaking at a media briefing in Durban in the KwaZulu-Natal province. He says he was out of the country when the ruling was handed down.
When the matter was discussed, I was not here, I was abroad. So I can't be answering because I was not there. And that matter will be handled. You'll get to know then at the time as to what is our approach to that matter.
And lastly, the United States is considering a proposal for humanitarian aid delivery in Gaza that would replace the controversial US-backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. According to a copy of the plan seen by Reuters, this is one of several concepts being explored. A fragile ceasefire between Israel and Hamas has been in place for 40 days. Under that deal, some more aid is now entering Gaza, where a global hunger monitor warned in August that famine had taken hold. According to the proposal, which also says the aim would be for all aid in Gaza to be delivered via the hubs within 90 days. Channel Africa News, I am Onele Tsinti.
SABC News. The African perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, India secure qualification semi-finals of the ongoing ICC Women's Cricket World Cup, while Pirates are under pressure ahead of their CAF Champions League match against FC Limpopo of the Democratic Republic of Congo. Details coming up at the bottom of the hour.
Zilipendwa na Abedi Jean de la Croix.
Leo tujadili kuhusu chipukizi wanaoimba nyimbo za wasanii wengine. Unadhani hili linatokana na nini, Omari?
Nadhani kweli kwamba tukizama muziki ya sasa hasa wasanii ambao ni chipukizi, kwa kweli kwamba yani karibu kutoka muziki wao wenyewe, lakini wanakuwa wanataka kuhubiria muziki ya zamani za muziki ya wengine ambao ni hivyo.
Wengine wanadai kufanya hivyo ni kupromote vipaji vyao haraka ili waweze kujulikana. Je, yawezekana kukawa na ukweli wowote au ndio kukosa kabisa kipaji cha kuandika mistari?
Ndio, hiyo unaona kwamba msanii anapoazimia kwamba kuchukua wimbo mwingine wa msanii mwingine na kurudilia mara mbili sivyo, haionyeshi kwamba yani ndo wanaanza kazi ya muziki aidha nini, lakini ukiangalia kabisa asilimia kubwa utakuja kuona kwamba wanakosa ile mawazo ya kutunga muziki.
Zilipendwa kila Jumamosi kuanzia saa 12 kamili majira ya Afrika ya Kati hadi saa 1 kamili majira ya Afrika ya Kati.
Você é fluente em português? É apaixonado por rádio e quer trabalhar na África do Sul? Você tem documentos que o qualificam para trabalhar na África do Sul? Nesse caso, podemos ter uma oportunidade para você trabalhar no Canal África. Envie seu currículo e demonstração para Canal África at newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Lembre-se, se você não receber alguma resposta nossa em 14 dias, isso significa que você não foi selecionado. Canal África, a perspectiva africana.
New day, new stories. Start your morning right with Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Right, let's go into this story that really has captured the attention of South Africans. South Africa's KwaZulu-Natal Provincial Police Commissioner, General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi, may be called back to appear before the ad hoc committee in Parliament to apologise in public after withdrawing allegations that he made against former Police Minister Bheki Cele. It emerged at the committee that General Mkhwanazi has retracted allegations that he made against Cele that he had received money from criminal accused Vusimuzi Kat Matlala via a message that was read by evidence leader Norman Arendse. We continue with our coverage of the Parliament's ad hoc committee investigating allegations of corruption and infiltration of criminal syndicates in the South African justice system. Abongwe Kobokana has been following the story for us.
Advocate Arendse reading out a text message from Mkhwanazi.
We had a short conversation with Lieutenant General Mkhwanazi in which he says that this allegation is withdrawn. The team, you probably know better than us, that was working on the analysis got the bank account number wrong, and that it's not a reference to you. So the allegation is withdrawn with due apologies from Lieutenant General Mkhwanazi for any inconvenience or hurt caused. Okay, Chairperson, I think that concludes our session.
The chairperson of the committee, Molapil Khanyane, says it's up to the committee to decide whether or not to call back Mkhwanazi to explain himself before he can apologize.
What will happen is that the members must not ask General Cele about that matter. General Mkhwanazi will have to amend his sworn statement, and the committee will make a decision whether we invite him to come back, so that where he has to make a public apology, that public apology must be made. It will be very good to have him in a forum like this one, where such statements were made, so that if members may want to ask questions can be asked.
EFF leader Julius Malema also insisted that Mkhwanazi will have to explain himself before Parliament.
This last part of the SC is not necessarily something that must be directed to the minister. He said that to us about the minister. So he's got anything to say, he has to write down to us and say, it looks like I got my facts wrong, and therefore I apologize to the minister and to the committee and to the people of South Africa. So I don't think it's for minister to even say anything. If there is such a development, we're being taken for, we're also being surprised. We can't be members of this committee. People come say things here, and then when they retract them, we hear them like any other person. It must come to us.
ANC Chief Whip Mdumiseni Ntuli also said that the text message that was read by Advocate Arendse was not enough.
How it's withdrawn is very important, because we were told in this hearing or this committee that there are people who have a capacity to design and send the messages on behalf of your number without you getting involved in that. Now, I mean, a matter serious as the one that we're dealing with now, I am of the view that it should not just be withdrawn, as other colleagues have said, by merely sending an SMS. I think we need something officially, properly written, that must be publicly communicated, not in a way that it has been made available.
Cele also told the committee that if he was the National Police Commissioner, he would have told the Police Minister, Senzo Mchunu, who has been placed on special leave, not to disband the KZN Political Killing Stars team.
And if I would really want to be modest, I would have said, can we have a discussion on the matter and privately tell him to stay on his lane or her lane.
Cele told the committee that he is open for his phone to be inspected in order to get data about his communication with Vusimuzi Ket Matlala.
But if you say want information about Ket Matlala and all that, I'm fine, or any other. But it can't be blanket coming to my phone and getting anything in my phone.
So it's a no.
It's yes, I'm simply saying, if you describe what information you want, including want information about Ket, that I'm fine. But you can't get my phone to get any other information that is in my phone that has got nothing to do with the ad hoc that is here. It can't be blanket.
He also added that he was unable to conclude that Matlala was guilty of the allegations he was facing the first time they met.
As I've said, that when I met him for the first time, I asked if he's Matlala, and I was not told by Mabonga that who am I meeting. So, but and again, I have read that stories, but the stories and the man that is being suspected would have to be confirmed by talking and engaging after we have engaged, rather than to say, I read the story from you and then I run away, especially in the environment that we were.
The former minister also praised Mkhwanazi and the Gauteng Crime Intelligence boss Dumisani Khumalo.
I've worked with Khumalo. I've seen his work. I think I don't know his dark side, but he's one, if he does have one, but he's one cop that I'll protect. So, and it's like Mkhwanazi himself. For me, he remains a good cop. People, they've asked that he has spoken things about you. I said, separate a good cop to the human being, because that is a good cop. It doesn't mean he's a perfect human being. We can come back to that. But there are those people that I will protect, knowing very well how much are they contributing towards the proper working of the organization.
New day, new stories. Start your morning right with Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
All right, let's continue unpacking this major story of judiciary, police corruption, alleged judiciary corruption. And there are two processes that are currently taking place. There's something called the Madlanga Commission, and we'll have a little bit more on that a little bit later on. And that was instituted by the president to look at allegations that have been made by the KwaZulu-Natal Provincial Police Commissioner about corruption in those various areas. And then also the country's parliament, South Africa's parliament, has an ad hoc committee on police that have been looking at these allegations. And yesterday, the ad hoc committee was interviewing and questioning former Police Minister Bheki Cele. Well, to help us unpack those developments and what came out of that, we're now joined by Professor Sipho Siepe, who's a political analyst. Prof, always good to talk to you. Thanks so much indeed for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
So, Prof, quite a lot came out yesterday. And even before we get into the detail, my overarching theme, it seemed as if there was a lot of political chicanery taking place.
Well, definitely. We need to understand that we are being treated to different versions of what is called history here. You have the statement that was made by Mkhwanazi, which had led to both the establishment of the commission, but also the establishment of this ad hoc committee. We now have two versions. You had the version of Mkwanazi versus that of the minister who's on special leave or on leave. And what you are going to have is other people who will be brought in. So between the two versions, it is a question of which one is most likely to be true. Mkhunu denied almost everything and presented himself as a good minister who is not consorting with the underworld. Now, yesterday, we had the former minister who effectively threw the current minister under the bus, effectively undermining everything that he had said and every excuse that he had given, but also corroborating the version of Lieutenant General Mkwanazi. First, what he said, he started first with dealing with the things that are known about him, Kele. First, the one was it is public knowledge that you have been in the presence of Ket Matlala, who is at the moment accused of all sorts of things. Kele did not even waste time. He acknowledged that. So with that underway, that gives a form of credibility that at least you have somebody who is not going to deny what is publicly known or what is public knowledge. And secondly, he sought to explain what is understood as the role of a minister versus that of the police. The distinction between the operational space as well as the police space. And in that, he sort of agreed with the understanding that was put forward by Mkwanazi and also members of parliament. So if that's the first thing that the MPs were in agreement with, that Mr. Mkhunu's interpretation cannot be correct. The second interpretation version that he presented is that the police, or what do you call it, the task team looking at the political killings was doing a good job. And the version of Mkhunu was that it added no value. So you also see the difference between the perspective of a number of generals and that of the Minister Mkhunu. And the former minister, Kele, was in agreement with all other people, including also the president, who had also indicated and even praised the work of the political task team. Then there is another element where Mkhunu claimed not to know Ket Matlala. And the version that came around from Kele is that he was informed by the very same Matlala that he had a meeting with Mkhunu and Brown Mokhotsi. So effectively nullifying this posture that had been taken by Minister Mkhunu, that I have no relationship, I have never seen with this person, I've never spoken to him. So all the denials have somehow been upended by the submission by General Kele. So which really says who is more believable. So effectively, you could actually say, yes, Mkhunu was thrown under the bus.
And you're so right about this weighing up who to believe. I guess the more evidence that corroborates Mkwanazi's version becomes problematic for Mkhunu.
Oh, definitely, but not only does it become problematic for Mkhunu, it also becomes problematic for the president. As Kele pointed out, this notion that suggests that just because you have a new administration, the interministerial committee ceases to function is incorrect. And he was showing that you had in 2018 the establishment of the political system that continued. And he was able to point out that what we are talking about here, we're not talking about warm bodies. You're talking about ministries. So the president who had established the task team is the one who has authority to do so. But what also makes Mkhunu's submission weaker is that if you are concerned about the absence of value of a task team, surely the most obvious thing, you'll talk to the people who have been engaged. You will try to look at the reports. We know that there was no forensic investigation in terms of their efficacy, other than the rumor that came from a number of people. And secondly, the timing of the disestablishment was problematic. But also there was also a discussion around what did you mean when you say the task team is being disbanded immediately. Suddenly we had a new meaning of what immediately means. But for the police, immediately means that you are actually undermining the very process that the police had already taken. And we also have the story about the dockets and all that. So the more we listen to the evidence or testimonies, Mkhuni appears to be alone against the overwhelming or emerging evidence that is actually coming. So there is, as soon as we could link Mkhunu to Ket Matlala, all his testimony collapses. Then it gives credence to Lieutenant General Mukwana's submission or proposition that the task team was disestablished to protect people who are engaged in criminal activity.
Does it surprise you that you've got two fairly senior ANC figures contradicting each other on such a public platform? That can't be good for the party generally, and that is politics. Yes, there's the inquiry, there's the ad hoc committee, but as I said at the beginning, there seems to be a lot of politics playing out here.
Well, definitely there is politics within the ANC. I mean, we must understand that the ANC, by its own design, is a very factional organization. When it talks about being a broad church, it is one way of saying we have different tendencies that are not speaking to each other. And also given that the ANC at the moment is the party that enables people to have access to resources, you can understand that the scramble for those resources and those tendencies will play themselves out as we see them play themselves out at the moment. So although Kele was at pains to explain that he and Mkhunu have always belonged in the same faction, but at the same time, we cannot rule out the possibility that being a has-been is a problem for people like Kele. But that does not mean that just because one has fallen out of favor with the current leadership, it does not mean that what they are saying cannot be true. This is why what we do is to weigh the evidence and to indicate that between these two versions that are presented to us, which one is supported by testimonies and by evidence. And once we have that, then we're able to make a discerning. But the ANC at the moment is it has now been weaker than it is now.
Prof, we're going to have to leave it there, but we're very grateful for your thoughts and your insights. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much.
That's Professor Sipho Siepe. Meanwhile, in the Madlanga Commission, witness B has concluded her testimony. The Commission of Inquiry was established by President Cyril Ramaphosa, and it was set up to investigate the allegations of misconduct, political interference and corruption in the police justice system. Witness B has been testifying at the Commission for the past 2 days, and watching it is Sibatle Muta.
Another emotional day at the Madlanga Commission as Witness B concluded her testimony. Witness B told the Commission that she hopes after it concludes its work, the situation within law enforcement agencies will improve. She adds that perpetrators named at the Commission must be held accountable. Witness B testified extensively about the intimidation and threats she and Witness A have been subjected to during their investigation of the Armand Swart case.
I don't want to cry, right? But what makes me emotional the most amongst these cases that we've been investigating, the pictures that is depicted, it works on me. And even mostly after some years, I've been visiting these families. Most of them, they have cried on my shoulder.
Witness B further testified on how the investigation into the Swart case started picking up speed when the KwaZulu-Natal Political Killings Task Team came on board. She says she doesn't know where her and Witness A would be if the PKTT did not intervene.
With everything that I've been involved in and with every person that I have arrested, this was really amazing to me. So much interference from various enforcement and agencies, not only SAPS. It made me wonder what was so special about this one suspect that was arrested on that day.
Witness B also testified that the firearm used in the murder of the Vereniging engineer Armand Swart was linked to 30 different cases. This in turn assisted the investigation team to crack other cases relating to it.
Witness B, what does it mean 30 hits? Is it 30 cases or 30 people linked to the casings or whatever? What does it mean, 30 hits?
Oh, commissioners, 30 hits, it means these firearms are linked to 30 cases, not per victim.
Witness C will take to the stand on Friday morning in partial camera. He is expected to testify on other cases relating to that of Armand Swart. I am Sibahle Mota in Pretoria.
New day, new stories. Start your morning right with Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
October 24, and that's the date today. And in 1945 on this day, the United Nations was founded. Yeah, the United Nations Day. The Charter of the United Nations officially came into force after being ratified by the majority of its 51 founding member nations, including 5 permanent members of the Security Council. And so this date is observed annually as United Nations Day. And that Security Council remains the same. And people have been calling for reform, that the world in 1945 is not the world of 2025, and that by now a more representative United Nations should be enforced. Perhaps we'll see these things in our lifetime, we don't know. But certainly since 1945, today, the UN was founded. It's 8:30. It's time for your news headlines. Here's Onele Nsinsi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. The Nigerian army says it has killed more than 50 Boko Haram and Sunni Islamic extremist group ISWAP militants after fierce battles in the country's northeast. South Africa's KwaZulu-Natal Province Police Commissioner Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi may be called back to appear before the ad hoc committee to apologize in public after withdrawing allegations he made against the former police minister Bheki Cele. It emerged that the committee that Mkhwanazi has retracted allegations he made against Cele that he had received money from criminal accused Vusimuzi Ket Matlala. And the United States is considering a proposal for humanitarian aid delivery in Gaza that would replace the controversial US-backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Nsinsi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Yeah, it's a Friday, and that means a weekend of sport is upon us with a lot of anticipation, and some football matches key and crucial, particularly here in South Africa. Orlando Pirates are facing a mountain. Well, to unpack all of this and other sports, we say good morning once again to Musibudi Rachel Makura.
Sports. on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you so much, Peter. Very good morning once again from the sports desk. And we'll start with that story about Orlando Pirates under enormous pressure. So they'll be looking to do something no other South African club has previously done if they are to avoid early exit from the Africa Champions League this weekend. So Pirates must fight back from a 3-0 deficit in Soweto at the Orlando Stadium. So they're home for the return leg on Saturday. This after losing the first leg of the second round tie to the unfancied Saint Elo Lupopo of the Democratic Republic of Congo in Lubumbashi last Sunday. So no other South African side has ever come back from a deficit of 3 or more goals suffered in the first leg of an African club competition knockout round tie, leaving the odds are stacked against the Buccaneers, who had lofty ambitions of continental success this season. So tomorrow's second leg at Orlando Stadium kicks off at 3 p.m. Central African time, with the aggregate winner then advancing to the group stages of the CAF Champions League. On to summer cricket news now. India stormed into the ICC Women's World Cup semi-finals after a commanding victory over New Zealand at the D.Y. Patel Stadium in Navi in Mumbai on Thursday. So centuries from Simriti Madhana as well as Patiga Rawal set up a record-breaking total before India's bowlers sealed a 59-run win via the Duckworth-Lewis Stern method in a rain-affected contest. So with that result, India became the fourth and final team to book their place in the semi-finals, while Madhana's record-breaking innings once again underlined her status as one of the most dependable performers in women's cricket. On to tennis news now. Yannick Sinner was made to work very hard by his compatriot Flavio Cobolli before the top seed mastered the Italian to reach the quarterfinals in Vienna on Thursday. So Sinner dominated the first set 6-2 in the last 16 tie, but had to remain patient as Cobolli dug deep to clinch the second set 7-6. Now, 4-time Grand Slam champion Sinner is playing in Austria after retiring with cramps very early on this month in the third round against Talun Griekspoor at the Shanghai Masters. Now, Sinner did not face a break point in the first set against Cobolli, but was unable to convert any of the 4 break point opportunities he secured in the second set. This is what he had to say after that win.
No, I mean, he's playing an incredible season. He's improving week after week. So I was looking forward for this one. He's one of very, very few Italians I haven't played before yet. So you're a great, great talent, great competitor, and yeah, we both played some great tennis at times, and I've had some chances in the second. Couldn't use them. That's tennis. I try to stay in the present moment, trying to play it with a great mentality.
Sinner will next face 8th seed Alexander Bublik in the quarterfinals after he downed Francesco Cerundolo 6-4, 6-2 in the last round of 16. So after a decade of roaring engines as well as sold-out grandstands, the Mexican Grand Prix will celebrate its 100th anniversary this weekend as a major economic driver and international showcase for the country. So Federico Gonzalez, the director of the Formula One Mexican Grand Prix, outlined plans this weekend to mark the milestone while reflecting on the event's journey since returning to the Formula One calendar in 2015. So the event will highlight collaborations between the FIA officials, local government, private sponsors, as well as institutions. Gonzalez describing it as a project for everyone. And finally, in basketball news, an NBA player and a coach are among dozens of people arrested as part of a sweeping FBI investigation into illegal sports betting and rigged mafia-linked poker games. Miami Heat player Terry Rozier and Portland Trail Blazers head coach Shwanzi Billups were named by federal prosecutors in 2 separate indictments on Thursday. Rozier is among 6 people arrested over alleged betting irregularities, including other NBA players who may have faked injuries to influence gambling markets. But meanwhile, a Hall of Famer player who has coached the Portland Trail Blazers since 2021 is one of the 31 people charged in a separate illegal poker game case involving retired players as well as the mafia. It's 8:36 a.m. Central African Time. It concludes your sports news this morning on Africa Rise and Shine. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, remember to send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or give us a call. The newsroom line is +27 11714 4459. I'm back with more sports news with the On The Move team in the next hour. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Musibu Di Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Mix Vibration sur Channel Africa.
Qu'est-ce qui vous a amené à dire ça? Est-ce que vous avez observé un certain nombre d'événements dans la vie? Est-ce que c'était par rapport à une expérience? Est-ce que vous avez rencontré des choses qui vous ont dit il faut de la patience, comme ça les choses vont venir au bon moment et le bon Dieu pourra peut-être me visiter?
Oui, c'était justement un conseil que le Seigneur m'a fait inspirer pour donner à son peuple, parce qu'il y a la plupart des gens, pendant que Dieu bénit les autres, ils pensent que Dieu les a oubliés, et pendant que Dieu ouvre pour les autres, ils pensent que peut-être Dieu n'a pas pu écouter leurs prières. Alors, ce n'est pas le cas. Alors, Dieu bénit tout un chacun de nous avec son temps. Donc, le temps de Dieu est toujours le meilleur dans la vie de tout un chacun de nous.
Mix Vibration, tous les dimanches de 18h à 19h, temps universel.
Okay, it's time now to get to our final business news update on Rise and Shine this morning. And we say good morning to Buntle Headbush.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thanks, Peter. A very good morning to you and a good morning to our listeners. Now, top business story this hour. The M23 armed group has denied accusations that its fighters have looted at least 500 kilograms of bullion from Twangiza Mining's gold concession in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. The company, which operates in South Kivu province, much of which is under M23's control, said this week that M23 had secretly transported the gold through underground channels. It also accused the rebels of using Rwandan technicians to extract geological data to resume and expand mining. Cornel Nanga, a leader of the rebel alliance that includes M23, says the mine was not in operation and that only artisanal miners were working there. Meanwhile, Twangiza Mining says it's preparing to file a formal complaint with international arbitration and Congolese authorities, and that it's declared force majeure. The South African Reserve Bank chief economist Chris Loewald says a weakening US dollar is now proving to be a key driver in the global fight against rising prices. This came out during the central bank's monetary policy review for October. Loewald says while global growth remains resilient, inflation worldwide continues to moderate. He says this improvement has created room for countries to ease interest rates further.
The this is the return on the rand, has increased quite a lot against the dollar. So the dollar's depreciation over the past year has helped that disinflation process in emerging markets. And we ask whether or not tariffs are starting to feed through into inflation numbers. I think the tentative answer is yes.
Meanwhile, Central Bank Governor Lesitsha Kganyago has issued a warning saying that despite generally better near-term economic results, the country continues to face deep structural challenges. Kganyago says the current global volatility could erode some of the recent gains.
It is a very volatile environment that we are in. And all of these tensions, trade and geopolitical, are likely to slow down global growth and keep inflation in focus. Here at home, growth has exceeded expectations in the second quarter, lifting the projected annual growth rate slightly. Continued reforms remain crucial to unlocking South Africa's growth potential. Inflation has stayed low and stable, closer to 3%.
Coca-Cola says it expects to take an impairment charge of about $1 billion during the fourth quarter of 2025 related to the sale of a part of its interest in bottling operations in Africa. Shares of Coca-Cola dipped about 1% in the late afternoon session yesterday following news of the impairment charge. This after Swiss-based bottler Coca-Cola HBC announced on Tuesday that it's agreed to buy a 75% stake in its African counterpart for $2.6 billion. Coca-Cola HBC would be acquiring US-based Coca-Cola's nearly 42% stake in Coca-Cola Beverages Africa and the Gutsche family investment's entire stake, valuing the African bottler at $3.4 billion. Fresh sanctions imposed by the United States on Russian oil companies are contributing to the higher Brent crude oil prices. The price of Brent crude oil jumped by more than 5% to $61 yesterday afternoon and has continued the upward trend this morning to $65.66 a barrel, signaling the biggest surge since mid-June. The U.S. has imposed sanctions on two major Russian oil suppliers, namely Rosneft and Lukoil, in retaliation to the ongoing war in Ukraine. It's noted that the two companies account for nearly half of Russia's oil exports. Visiting professor at Wits Business School, Professor Yanni Rousseau elaborates.
The oil price is very sensitive to international political uncertainty, and if the oil price is on an upward trajectory, in my mind, that would be an indication of increased political uncertainty. For instance, we have a number of wars going on. We still have, as we've had for a long time, this war between Russia and the Ukraine. So I would look for political uncertainty as the reasons for the oil price to go up. At the same time, we have to remember that the Northern Hemisphere is about to go into their winter season. And normally in their winter season, the demand for oil increases.
And now for a look at the indicators. One US dollar in Nigeria is trading at 1,461 naira. In Botswana, it's 13 pula 28. Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shilling 24. And in Zambia, it's 22 kwacha 26. Moving to the BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil is trading at 5 rial 39. Russia, 81 rubles 36. In India, it's 87 rupees 82. China, 7 yuan 12, and South Africa, $1 is trading at 17 rand 35 cents this morning. $1 is trading at 74 pence to the British pound and 86 to the euro. Looking at commodities, gold is trading at $4,117, platinum at $1,580 per ounce, while the price of Brent crude oil, as mentioned earlier, $65.66 a barrel. And those are your business news. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or give us a call on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I'm Bontle Hedbush.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. Wake up to the essence of the continent. Rise and shine on Channel Africa.
According to the World Bank, global carbon pricing instruments generated more than $100 billion in revenue in 2023. But Africa's share remains minimal. As delegates gather at the 2025 Carbon Market Africa Summit in Johannesburg in South Africa, the message is clear. Carbon markets hold the potential to unlock billions in finance for the continent, but turning that promise into reality now requires concrete action to make African countries truly carbon market ready. Channel Africa's economics reporter Innocent Sumusa has more.
The Africa Carbon Market Initiative, or ACMI, says Africa has the potential to grow its carbon credit market several times over, unlocking billions of dollars in revenue. According to ACMI's latest roadmap and status and outlook report, the continent could generate around $6 billion a year by 2030 if the right conditions are in place. Resident representative of United Nations Development Programme, UNPD South Africa, and director of the Africa Sustainable Finance Hub, Africa Region, UNPD, Maxwell Gomera, says climate shocks are becoming an economic line.
With close to 2 to 5% of GDP each year being spent in mitigating the impacts of droughts and floods, we are spending a lot of our national budgets that should go to education, to health, to other things, just trying to deal with the impacts of climate. Meanwhile, 600 million Africans still lack access to electricity, oxygen of any modern society, and even for the money in the room. This is important.
The World Bank's report that global carbon pricing instruments brought in over $100 billion in 2023, yet Africa's share remains minimal. So, what is the continent doing to change that? Gomera explains.
But Africa has not been sitting back. We've tried to do something. We launched Mission 300 to connect 300 million million people by 2030. The World Bank is aiming at 250 million. The African Development Bank is talking about 50 million people. Already 12 million people have been reached. But the gap remains enormous. Money is flowing, but not fast enough.
But where will the rest of the money that's needed come from?
We have a huge gap. Well, carbon markets. Built with integrity, carbon markets can turn Africa's natural and technological strengths into investable cash flows that can reach communities and lower the cost of capital and speed up real projects.
TASC South Africa's Commercial Director, Storm Patel, says the tools used to tackle climate change can achieve far more than simply removing a molecule of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere.
They can uplift livelihoods, they can restore land, they can build new industries, and they can do all of that from Africa for Africa. I'm here today on behalf of the African Stove Company, or TASC, and I want to use our brief time together to make a simple argument. If we design carbon finance around people and place, Africa can not only participate in the global climate economy, it can lead it.
As Africa works to position itself in the global carbon economy, leaders and experts say the focus must now shift from discussions to decisive action, ensuring that carbon markets not only cut emissions, but also drive real development and prosperity across the continent. For Channel Africa News, I'm Innocent Samos in Johannesburg.
And it's time now for one of my favourite regular features that we bring you every time this week, and that's a look at arts and culture. And nobody does it better than Nhlanhla Mahlangu. This is African Arty Beats.
Welcome to this week's African RT Beats exclusive to Channel Africa, The African Perspective. I am Nhlanhla Mahlangu. In this week's segment, Africa's entertainment and media sector redefines growth and the global music community to meet in the city of Tshwane in South Africa for the Access Music Conference and Showcase Festival. The African continent is in the midst of a profound shift in how entertainment and media is created, consumed, and monetized. This is according to PwC's latest Africa Entertainment and Media Outlook Perspective Report 2025 to 2029. The report reveals that Kenya, Nigeria, and South Africa are not only outperforming global benchmarks, but also redefining the future of media through mobile-first consumption, digital innovation, and the adoption of generative artificial intelligence. Charles Stewart, PwC's Africa Entertainment and Media leader, has more on the findings.
If I look at the market cover from an outlook perspective, so South Africa, Nigeria, and Kenya, first thing is that growth in 2024 exceeded global growth. So South Africa grew at 6%, Kenya grew at 7%, Nigeria grew at 11%. And then if we look through over the forecast period through to 2020, Nigeria is forecast to grow at 7.2%, Kenya at 5.2%, South Africa a little bit slower at 3.5%. And really, the main factors that are driving that growth through to 2029 are around your digital segments within the market. So one, obviously connectivity, more room for growth from a connectivity perspective in Nigeria and Kenya, and hence they are growing a bit faster than South Africa. And then your digital segments within the E&M market around internet advertising, which is one of the fastest growing segments across all three of the markets. In fact, Kenya has the fastest growing internet advertising market globally. It's forecast to grow at around 16% per annum through to 2029. And then other strong growth areas were in the OTT space, so the video streaming, music streaming, and then your video games and esports.
Nigeria remains the fastest growing E&M market in Africa, and this has been the trend over the last couple of years. What can this growth be attributed to?
In Nigeria, Atlanta is in the connectivity space. So a lot of it is about people coming online for the first time. So if we look at 2024, 4G subscription penetration in Nigeria is sitting at around 34%. By 2029, that will grow to around 62%. And so a lot of it is people gaining access for the first time, and therefore obviously now spending on that connectivity access. So that is a key driver from a revenue perspective. From a pace of growth perspective, as I say, internet advertising is one of the fastest growing elements. Obviously, as more people consume digital content, so then the advertising follows that spend, and then the digital content drivers are then, as I say, in the OTT music streaming space. So those are really the items that are driving that growth from a Nigeria perspective.
What role does artificial intelligence and gaming play in this growth?
Not from a pure sort of revenue growth perspective, but it is helping to drive revenue, particularly in your content-heavy segments, right? So when one thinks about your streaming in both your OTT, your music, your video content production, your personalized advertising, AI has a role to play in those in terms of being able to produce content in a faster but more cost-effective manner. And so this does allow, starts to create, I think, the opportunity for other entrants to potentially enter the market into a space which was previously very, very, very expensive to produce content previously. So I think that's the role in AI, is it's more of a supportive role at the moment in terms of, as I say, new entrants and, but also allowing existing entrants to be able to, extend the longevity of some of their content production. Content production always going to be key, obviously, in terms of entertainment and media, and having that that compelling content.
What are some of the key takeaways from this report, particularly for content creators who continue to dominate the entertainment sector?
As they're always going to be key, because you need that compelling content to be able to engage with your consumers. But the content creator is always going to be they're only part of the equation, right? Because obviously, as more and more consumption moves into the digital space, great content is only part of the answer, right? One also needs to be able to effectively distribute that content. And so what we're seeing for companies in terms of success in the space is you really need to get 5 things right. You need to, one, have access to the right technology or platform. Secondly, you need to have great content. Third, you need to be able to distribute that content in a cost-effective manner in an increasingly mobile-led world, to an engaged consumer who trusts the brand, right? Those 5 elements are key. So your content is where a lot of it starts, but your content together with an effective, cost-effective distribution channel and understanding what your consumers want are all part of the overall equation.
South Africa's city of Tshwane will next week host the 2025 edition of the Access Music Conference and Showcase Festival from the 30th of October to the 1st of November. The event is a premier Pan-African platform where music industry players connect, share knowledge, showcase, and discover new talent. It has brought together thousands of industry players in cities such as Dakar, Nairobi, Accra, Johannesburg, Dar es Salaam, and Kigali. Eddie Mhingo, creative consultant, entrepreneur, and hip-hop scholar, has more on the festival.
Access is basically a business conferencing event, a 3-day event where pretty much the entire world of music is brought to one specific location, and everybody exchanges, and we have presentations, we have networking sessions, we have business exchanges, things of that nature, and we try and find ways in which we can advance not just music, but the business of music for the benefit of artists and African artists in that regard. Why is it important? It's important because it allows the musician to kind of step beyond their boundaries, beyond their localities. And for that week, you really get to explore, you get to meet different aspects of what music is, from the business to marketing, to collaborations, and even to performances, because there will be performances from different artists, not just from South Africa, but from around the continent as well. So it's really, really important, and I'm very, very excited to not just be representing Botswana, but also to be representing the region, because one thing that we're really trying to do is to push for Southern African integration and co-creative collaborations, like I like to call them. And that way, when we interact with different regions, we can also do so as one block.
That's it from this week's African RT Beats. Until next Friday, for Channel Africa, I am Ndlandla Mahlangu in Johannesburg.
And so that's RT Beats for another week. Well, coming up after the 9 o'clock news is On the Move. And Benjamin is here to tell us what's going to be on the program. Good morning.
It's a Friday, so it's always fun, on a Friday.
Yeah.
So we're looking forward to it. In the first hour, we're going to be chatting all things business of music. You know, it must be a difficult time being a musician today, you know, in our days.
Yeah.
Peter.
Yes.
I know we come from different generations.
Yes, I know.
But what links my generation and your generation is the fact that you could go and buy a vinyl.
Yes.
And that vinyl would mean a musician would get some form of money for that sale, right? Today, if you can't find a store to even buy a cassette, what goes to these musicians, right?
So in theory, actually, things should be better now.
Yeah.
Because we live in a digital world and environment, these computers, as soon as your song starts playing, your details should be already being fed to a central place that your song was played.
Yes.
These are the royalties that are due. In my day, I, the DJ, had to write a form.
Sure.
I played this song on this day, and then I'd hand it into office. The office would then send it off to Sanro, whatever it was.
Yeah.
They would then go through it, and it would take forever.
But why is it that now the musicians are complaining about the streaming platforms, saying that the platforms are taking a larger chunk of the percentage of their creative work than they used to actually gain when things were as manual as you've described them?
What they need to do is to go to platforms like YouTube. And people, every time they view it, the number of views, they get paid directly. No middleman, nothing. Because in the end, people aren't even buying CDs anymore.
Yeah.
We're not downloading music
not
much.
anymore.
So go on the internet, set up a YouTube channel, website, whatever, and market directly. That's what I would tell them to do.
Okay,
but
cool. That's what's coming up.
You tell them Peter Ndoro said that.
All right. I'll definitely do that.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you very much indeed for joining us for Rise and Shine this entire week. We'll see you Monday morning, 6 a.m. bright and early. Have an awesome weekend in between. It's 9 o'clock. Here's the news with Onele Nsinsi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Looking at your top stories, the Nigerian army says it has killed more than 50 Boko Haram and Sunni Islamic extremist group ISWAP militants, and the United States considering a proposal for humanitarian aid delivery in Gaza. Your latest news. Greetings to our listeners. The Nigerian army says it has killed more than 50 Boko Haram and Sunni Islamic extremist group ISWAP militants. This after fierce battles in the country's northeast. The clashes came as insurgents launched coordinated drone and rocket-propelled grenade attacks on several military bases in Borno and Yobe states. The army reports that the militants used drones to drop explosives, a growing tactic in the region's insurgency. Researcher at the Institute for Security